Live from Facebook, it's CoCoTALK After Dark. Lock up the women and hide the pets and get out your alcohol, because it's time to get wild. Oh man, I just love that intro song. Hey, there's Brian Joyce saying good day. How are you there, Brian? Brian Joyce is joining us from Australia. So we're here. We are.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Nick, is that your neighbor by any chance?
Yeah, g'day.
G'day.
Finally, someone I can understand what he's saying.
Everybody's just a boomerang throwaway in Australia. On the show right now, and of course anyone's welcome to join us, but on the show right now we have manning the Skype call our engineer and communications officer, Grant Leedy. How are you this evening, Grant?
I am doing better, thank you.
All right, from sunny Southern California. Sorry, did I cut you off, Grant? Go back.
I was just saying, I'm getting over the David Ladd flu.
Getting over the David Ladd flu. Yes.
You keep talking floppies, is it?
Yes. And from sunny Southern California, Steve Bjork, thanks for returning to us today, sir.
Pleasure to be here.
Is your MC-10 flew over? He talked all about MC-10s.
No. I take the MC-10s down to the shooting range to see how many bullets I can put through the middle of them.
Joining us from Ohio, Jason, the CoCo Man Reichert. How are you, Jason?
Oh, just peachy.
Yeah, we'll do it live, Jason.
To play us out?
To play us out. Play us out. From Down Under, Nick Marentes. G'day, Nick.
G'day, everyone.
What time is it in Aussie right now?
Right now it's 12 o'clock.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. And we also have joining us from Strongware, maker of fine hardware, software, and three-dimensionally printed objects, John Strong. How are you this evening, sir?
Oh, not too bad.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
You'll hear some noise in the background. I've got some 3D prints going. So, Zipster did another order for the MIDI MPI.
All right.
So I'm trying to get those printed up for him so people can get those.
That's the sound of progress. We like that sound. And joining us once again, before we introduce this person, we might as well hear some of the incredible music productions that he has produced for us, including the CoCoTALK After Dark jingle. Feast your ears on this, people.
CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Alan Huffman. How are you, Alan?
Good evening. Hey, when are you going to use the new version? That was just the prototype.
I know. Well, we got plenty of stuff. I've got all kinds of stuff queued up in a soundboard to play out throughout the evening. But I like that one, honestly. That's one of my favorites. But how about, well, here's another one here. This is a shorty. Shorty but goody.
CoCoTALK After Dark.
There you go. Short and sweet. So what are you up to today, Alan?
Well, I've been going through basement storage, trying to get a lot of stuff unpacked to make room so I can actually finally go through boxes that I've had packed away for years. The goal is to get enough room down there that I can go through all this color computer stuff I used to have when I lived in Texas, plus all the things I've accumulated over the years at the CoCo Fest, and see what I'm going to keep and what I'm going to bring and donate to the Glenside auction in April.
Nice.
Of course, one way you can keep from getting more stuff is stop trying to outbid everybody at the CoCo Fest auction. You're infamous for that.
Well, it's only if there's something that I want. Of course, now I've got 3 video digitizers, so I think I'm good on those.
I was going to say...
You bid on your own stuff.
Yeah. that was a pretty good revelation that Richard Lorbieski dropped on us today, how he got all those T-shirts from Micro Rare and previous CoCo Fest and Rainbow Fest. So that's going to be kind of cool to have some of that ultra rare stuff in the auction. So that might get some good bidding rivalry stuff going. We'll have to wait and see on that, huh?
I'm thinking of bringing a bunch of my shirt collection as well. I have a lot of duplicate CoCo Fest shirts from over the years.
Yeah, might get some good bidding.
The Team OS9 shirts were only for people who were connected with Strongware or Savita. So that's a rare one.
Ah, neat. That is pretty cool. And so go ahead, Grant.
Oh, I was going to ask you, Steve, have we thought about maybe doing a special CoCoTALK t-shirt for the CoCo Fest?
That's not a bad idea. I think with a little photoshopping, we can probably do that.
I think it'd be a good idea. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, cool. Why don't you dress it up and do polo shirts?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I've done a little inquiries into that and haven't gotten too much good feedback on some of that. But a lot of these places want like $150 setup to do all the designs for embroidery and stuff. And to me, that's kind of like it's a high risk when you don't even know how it's going to look, you know?
Okay, well, I've got we have a place that we use for some of our work shirts that's a much affordable. It's a much more affordable way to do it. So we'll talk offline, and I'll check with the guys at work. They're all running around with embroidered shirts with our company logo on it that they just paid to have made, and it was a really cheap setup. And you can just give them the shirts, and they'll just embroider onto your own shirts. So you can like bulk order from some shirt supplier. So maybe we can work something like that out, because I'd love to wear one. I'd wear a CoCoTALK shirt at the fest.
Yeah, okay. Well, that sounds like a plan. That's a good idea, Grant. Once again, Grant Leedy has come up with a good idea. You're an idea man, sir. That's why I pay you the big bucks.
Now, I have a second question. What about your DVD for this year's CoCo Fest? Are you going to do one?
Oh, that's a great idea too. Yeah. Who the hell knows? It's like we're running out of time. We're already like on the corner of February, so I've got like basically February and March. I've been toying with that idea. I haven't figured out what game specifically what I wanted to play, but I was thinking if I was going to do a new DVD, I wanted it to be completely retro. I was going to record it on a real CoCo, record it to a VHS tape, and then transfer that tape to a DVD and keep it all 4:3, so it'll play. If you've got an old TV to play it on, it'll look, as close to as it could have looked like from a real CoCo. So that's as far as I've gotten into like the format and the style. But as far as the playlist of what games to show, to be determined. But that's about it for right now. But not a bad idea. I'm also hoping to be able to show off some progress on whatever game thing I'm working on right now.
Yeah, time is running out quickly. I just realized it's about less than 3 months now.
Mm-hmm. Which reminds me, I got to play the cheesy lounge music. So hold on here 1 second. All right, now it is officially. We are in the Retro Lounge, folks. And for tonight, I figured I'd open it up to where anybody who wants to discuss any retro topic, let's talk retro. Doesn't have to be color computer related. All of us here are CoCo nuts, so we might be spewing out some CoCo stuff, but anybody else who's watching who wants to call in, we can talk about anything. So among the panel right now, who has anything non-CoCo they'd like to talk about that's retro, vintage, whatever?
That was overwhelming.
Who's David's barber?
Who's David's barber?
I just want to avoid him, that's all.
So Jim Gary's in a live chat says, "Can we talk about the MC10?" Yeah.
And why not?
Oh, I've got to go all of a sudden. Yeah.
I tell you what, I did a non-CoCo thing right before CoCoTALK today. I played some Sega Genesis and played one of my favorite Sega Genesis games, which is Golden Axe. And the Sega Genesis is definitely in my top 5 all-time favorite retro vintage systems.
No, you got to play Rocket Man. Is that right, Steve?
Rocket Man?
Rocket Man?
Man?
Not familiar
Is
with
that-
that game.
Is that yours? No?
For the Super Nintendo, I did Rocketeer.
Rocketeer. That's the one I'm trying to think of. But it's
Rocketeer.
for the Super Nintendo. Okay.
Yeah.
Cancel that.
Yeah.
Did you do any Sega Genesis games?
Oh yeah, I did a few.
Which ones?
Well, Sega was working on something called Sega VR for the Sega Genesis, and at the very end, just before they released it, they got cold feet. But I was writing one of the launch titles called Iron Hammer, where you're flying along a planet and you've got things attacking them. And what was really great is you could just look around with your head, line up the crosshairs on an object, and do a nice little lock-on homing missile to take it out. So you'd have like 20 or 30 of these missiles homing in on you, and you're just moving your head around going boom, 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 blasting all these things that are about to take you out. But yeah, it was definitely one of the first VR games that was going to be for the Sega VR system. But as I said, what it was is the lawyers got cold feet because they didn't want Johnny to put the system on, walk out into the street, and get hit by a car.
Right. Well, how long was the cord?
People were battery operating Sega Genesises, and
wow.
they were worried about them walking out. Now, I was involved a little bit looking at developing some products for the very poorly received and died quickly VR Game Boy. And originally that was going to strap on your head and you could walk around with it. And the lawyers got really scared and they told them, no, it's going to mount on a table. That way Johnny can't walk around with it and get hurt.
Yeah.
So that really, because the original design was you could move your head around like any VR system that's modern and use that to change your perspective. And that was like one of the first things they yanked out of it. Yeah, the attorneys really killed that system. Well, also they were rushing it too because the guy that was creating, I forget the name of the gentleman, but he had created a lot of things for Nintendo. And he wanted the color version, but all they would allow him to put in was the red version of imagery. Now, have you ever looked inside of a, a Nintendo VR Game Boy?
I never have. I've seen pictures, but it's like red. Retina red.
I actually owned one at one point.
Well, the way it
Virtual
worked
Boy.
is you had an array of LED diodes and a mirror that was moving up and down. And that's how they scanned the image into your eyeball. And you had a left and a right. What he was holding out for was where there would be 3 rows of LEDs. So you had red, blue, and green, and you could do full color. And they didn't want to wait for that, so they pushed it onto the market. But I remember being at the developer conference for the that VR, and there was a moment there. Security came into the developer's room, guarded the doors, and at that time the lawyers started telling us what we could or could not do on the system, and that we had to put brakes in. And when they got done, we all had to sign papers that said we were told that we had to do this by Nintendo. It was just
Wow.
the first time I ever experienced anything like that. The lawyers were driving, and the accountants were driving the game system, not the designers.
Just got to drop off, guys. I'll be back in about 15-20 minutes.
All right, Nick. Good
No
on
worries,
you.
yeah.
Good on you, mate.
Life's catching up to. All right.
Yeah. Hey, Jason, your brother Ken is in the chat. So, if you didn't know that. Yeah, he said that system is called Virtual Boy. Is what
That's
he was
a
saying.
Virtual Boy.
Virtual
Yeah.
Boy.
Yeah, I owned one, and it now lives in Australia.
Oh, wow. It was a little bit ahead of its time, probably.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I remember when they cleared them out for $20 a piece.
Wow.
Yeah, somewhere in my collection I've got that, along with the Game Gear, which sucked batteries like crazy, because it did have a full color display and need a really bright backlight. But the Sega Game Gear, was a nice system. One of the games that they had to come out for it, and I kept on saying, why do you want to do this on a system where you're lucky if you get 45 minutes of battery life? Was a chess game. I made a chess game for that frickin' thing.
Speed
hey, I got
chess.
paid. I got paid. But
now, was there an
I
option?
actually had an AC adapter.
I was going to say, is there an option to plug that one in where if your battery was starting to die, you could keep going?
yeah, but most people didn't buy the adapter. They just plugged in new batteries, and of course, when you went to plug the batteries in, the game got reset.
Right. No NV
I
RAM or
remember
anything.
the AC adapter just replaced the battery box.
So you had to yank that out, which means you would have lost what you were doing anyways.
Yep.
And at the time I got mine, it was $20 on clearance, and the AC adapter was $20.
Wow. So misthought. I remember hearing or reading back in the time too that Game Gear, which was the portable kind of handheld Sega style system. I think that one only supported about 32 colors.
Effectively, it was a master system. The kind of, it was master system put in a portable, and so it's using a full-powered, full-fledged Z80 microprocessor. Which is another reason why it sucked down juice.
Right, because they didn't have mobile optimized processors back then like they do now.
Yeah.
So
the ZA was never more efficient. Now, when Nintendo was doing their game cartridges, game systems like the original Game Boy and like that, they used an 8080 that had some instructions in it, so it acted more like a Z80. But it didn't have like index registers and the other things ZA. They just kind of added some of the instructions they liked. So it was definitely a processor built strictly for Nintendo. But one of the things that they did is made it very energy efficient.
Gotcha. Okay. I remember hearing some stuff in some of the magazines that Game Gear was actually hurting some of the Genesis titles because the people would write for the Game Gear first and then just kind of poured it that way over to the Genesis, and so some of the Genesis titles lacked some color and possibly some capabilities because they kind of went at it on the wrong direction. I don't know how true that was.
Well, the Genesis, it had a master system in it plus a 68,000 and extended graphics of what the Genesis had. So it basically was a master system to begin with.
Okay. Because the Z80 that was in there.
Right. And the way the graphic processor was set up is it effectively was a master system, but then you had extensions that would take it all the way to what a Genesis graphic system was capable of.
Interesting. I never realized that.
Yeah.
We got a couple people in the live chat here. So Andrew John Bodner says at one point you could get a Virtual Boy for almost nothing. But now that everything retro is hot, they're actually getting more expensive. Same thing with the Sega 32X. Yeah, 32X was a train wreck. Ken says we could talk ColecoVision. I had a friend who would let me come and watch him play. Actually, ColecoVision is one of my favorite systems too. I do like the ColecoVision, but I found the CoCo was able to almost surpass the game quality. So for about 15 minutes, ColecoVision was hot with that version of Donkey Kong and Zaxxon, and then as soon as the CoCo's Donkey King and Zaxxon came out, I was like, who needs that Coleco what? I do like the ColecoVision.
He's saying, his friend would let him watch him play because, I had those friends where they had the video game system. I didn't have it, and they were excellent at it. You got to play 10 seconds, and then you died, and then you got to watch them play for another 20 minutes.
He was player one. Player one would go forever. Player two was in and out. I hated the damn controllers. When we talk about why did Tandy do that, there were a handful of console controllers that you really want to question the sobriety of those designers. The ColecoVision was one of them. The Atari 5200 was another. They completely non-ergonomic sticks with the buttons on the side. You know, it was just begging for carpal tunnel. I hated that ColecoVision controller.
What about the Intellivision controllers?
You know, I just got one. I haven't played with it yet, but that was like a little disc, right? It was like a 8-directional disc that you pushed in the different directions. A little ahead of its time.
Someone came out with an option where you could put a double stick tape and it was like flat
you just
stick.
like a suction cup joystick you just stuck onto the disc, right? So yeah. Yeah, Ken says exactly. You got it right. If he's player 2, you basically watch the other guy play. Yeah. If you guys have Skype, feel free to join us on Skype. You can call in. Add CoCoTALK as a Skype contact. The Sega Nomad portable system had an even worse battery life since it was a portable Genesis. It was around 2 to 3 hours of battery power, is what Andrew's saying here.
It's there were so many mistakes Sega did, and believe it or not, you remember the N64, Nintendo 64?
Mm-hmm.
That was the Silicon Graphics Reality Engine chip. Sega had the first chance at that. And Sega of America was all set to go with it, but Sega of Japan wouldn't do it.
Wow.
See, I've always had this opinion. Generally, the hardware and the programming for Sega stuff was much easier. They had 68000s, which were a great processor, but the graphics were a little lacking. If they would taken what they've done on the Super Nintendo and put it on the Genesis, you would have had a killer graphic system.
Yeah.
And a killer game. And Nintendo stayed pretty good with the Silicon graphics, and later they went with ATI for the graphic stuff. And they've done pretty good with the graphics.
Yeah.
The processor is where Nintendo likes to screw up, because they'll make things too complicated, or they'll use a 6502 or a 65816, which is a quote-unquote a 16-bit 6502. And, it's just like, it was nuts. Like in the Game Boy, they had that 8080 processor with an added few instructions. And it's just like, guys, come on, get real. And that's the reason why things like Sonic the Hedgehog was so fast. Because you had a powerful processor doing everything.
Yeah, they what did they coin that phrase? Blast processing with Sonic, and how fast it was. And their benchmark was really comparing it against like a Mario World or Super Mario World, which was a side scroller, but it wasn't built for speed. It was, it was good level design and good playability, but it wasn't high speed, where Sonic was all about the speed, which was kind of like bragging rights. Hey, Michael Newman is here. How are you, Michael? Sega took a couple of wrong turns, in which I think started to seal their fate. They had a couple opportunities to really raise the stakes. One of them was with the Sega CD, which I had. I'm a Sega guy. I always was. I had the Sega Genesis. When you compare the Genesis to the NES, it was definitely a quantum leap in graphical and audio and gaming potential. So they got that one right. But then when you got like the Sega CD, which was a really cool add-on console, and making them one of the first multimedia CD-ROM based systems, even though the Famicom was designed to be that way, they never released that. They had an option to increase the color palettes or graphics or whatever, and they really didn't. I think they added some more sprite capabilities and a few more parallax planes, but they didn't really boost the color palette. And I feel that was one of their first missed opportunities there, because by that time the Super Nintendo was already doing 8-bit color, 256 color on screen. They were visually superior, and I think they really screwed that pooch, even though the multimedia was a nice add-on.
Well, Nintendo was working with Sony to create the CD attachment for their, basically the Super Famicom / Super Nintendo unit. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have CD with it, but they didn't like the deal they're doing with Sony, and they dropped out. Sony says, so screw this, we'll come out with our own system. But you know who was working with Sony before Nintendo? Sega was. And so both Nintendo and Sega screwed Sony. They said the hell with this, and then they came out with the PlayStation.
Yeah, and the rest is history. Yeah.
Yep. Sega no longer makes consoles.
Yep,
just a little bit of software.
Yeah.
And Nintendo has turned over a lot of the video game market to Sony.
Interesting. Yeah. I think another missed opportunity was that 32X. The 32X, I look at 32X was kind of like Windows Millennium Edition. It was just a fundraiser. They really weren't ready to release a new tier product. They were trying to throw some crap out there to the market to sell it, to make some money. But that was another, I think, disappointment. It could have been better. Didn't quite deliver the dream. I think the Saturn made up for it. But the 32X will go down in the annals of history as one of the worst mistakes ever, I think.
Well, that was from the guys, Sega of Japan. They're trying to keep that system alive with that, along with the Sega CD. Where Sega America, they wanted to move on to the Saturn.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. It could be reversed. I just know that the Sega America and Sega Japan were constantly battling.
Yeah, and I think it was Sega of America that said, hey, let's pack in Sonic. And that's when I think started sounding like hotcakes, because I believe their first pack-in was Altered Beast, which is an interesting game, but I don't think it's a huge attractor for America.
But you had these huge characters that were difficult to do on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, the bigger
At
bosses
first.
and stuff, yeah.
Once people understood the graphic systems, they started using entire planes for the large characters. And, of course, Mode 7 was the real kicker. You could all do this 3D aspect.
Roger that. Well, hopefully this hasn't become completely Sega talk, but yeah, I could talk Sega forever. Anybody else want to chime in on anything?
Does anybody remember Game.com and the Cyberco?
No, I don't.
Game.com, which I think I found out through Steve, was kind of a Game Boy alternative that came with a stylus, so you could actually run real apps on it. And I think they had a modem cartridge for it and all kinds of stuff coming out. And the Cyberco was a later generation thing, probably around 2000, that was like a handheld PDA with a keyboard and a shortwave radio, so it could communicate wirelessly to other Cybercos. And its business model was you run software on your PC or Mac, and you can go out and download all the games you want for free. So there were just hundreds of cheesy little black and white games for the Cyberco, and it also had like an MP3 cartridge for it. These were really interesting machines, but they just didn't catch on.
Interesting. It sounds like what the Game Boy or the what's that one? What's the Nintendo thing with the stylus? The DS. It sounds like what the DS would eventually become, because that had peer-to-peer Wi-Fi and stuff with stylus. Because my daughter, my oldest daughter, had a DS when those were hot.
There's a long list of things that did it first that didn't catch on. I mean, a lot of folks might remember when we used to use VHS tapes, there was an attempt to put movies on little plastic discs that you could put into a player and put them on your TV, and just nobody wanted it. It was called the video CD.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but it was also pretty low quality, though.
Oh, yeah. They would claim VHS quality, but that's questionable. And that was part of the different book standards. One of those, there was like Red Book and the different colored standards for CD-ROMs. And one of them was based on OS 9. And that was one used for interactive content like games and educational titles and stuff like that. And they had the CDI machine, which was something that you'd put software on a CD and hook it up to your TV and play it. Just stupid idea. Nobody wanted that. We just want cartridges that are cheap.
Yeah, that was CD Interactive. I remember that being baked into a couple of different things, like CD players and a few other consoles that had CDI in it, yeah.
Well, back in the day when we were looking at the specs for CDI, our term for it was can't do interactive.
And it was still better than the Tandy VIS player.
Okay. They used a 68070, which is a brain dead version of a 68000, which is a 16/32-bit processor. Very powerful, and it goes through a lot of memory very quickly. But they put it onto an 8-bit data bus, which just stifled how fast it could do an instruction.
Wow.
It was doing instructions slower than 6809.
Wow.
Yeah, and that chipset, the processor and the graphics chip for the CDI player is basically what the MM1 computer was based on for the OS 9 CoCo 4 machine.
Interesting.
It's all connected, and I still have a bunch of CDI players. Microware developed the CD RTOS for Philips, and I still have some of the units that were part of Microware stuff. I took a whole bunch of them when they were getting rid of them, so I may have to bring the rest of them to a CoCo Fest sometime.
Yeah, one of the things that the Sega CD did, we're talking about CDs right now, but they have built-in playability for the CD plus G standard, CD plus graphics, which really didn't take off too big, but it came with a CD sampler of about a dozen or so tracks, and it was kind of like watching an animated slideshow of images, and it did palette shifts and a little bit of, I don't remember if it parallaxed or not, but it was really cool, and there was like some Jimi Hendrix on there and a few other ones, and so it came with a sampler. I ended up buying the full CDs. It was kind of trippy. It was kind of cool. I think that really only ended up being used for like karaoke and stuff where you could see like the lyrics put on screen.
It was
while the
big in Japan.
Oh, was it really?
Big in Japan and big for karaoke over here.
Yeah. But CD plus G really could have been something, but I don't think we had in the States anyways a lot of music discs that supported that. But I do remember buying the full Jimi Hendrix Greatest Hits and maybe one or two others that were teased on that little sampler disc. I thought it was a great concept that just never saw a bigger world.
Now, going back even earlier, we all remember Laserdisc as a standard for videos and like that. RCA came out with another one that a lot of people really scratched their heads on. I forget the name, but it actually was more like a record with a stylus doing video.
Wow.
And it had a tendency that after about 10 or 20 plays, it couldn't play the video anymore.
Right.
It literally wore it out.
It had to go optical for longevity, I guess, huh? Yeah, Ken says it was the RCA video disc.
The quality was worse than videotape.
That's progress. Yeah. All right, I'm going to do a quick commercial break. I got to do a refill. I'm going to grab another beer. I'm going to let about 2 or 3 commercials run. So if anybody needs to take a potty break or anything, now's a good time to do that. We are still live, and we'll be back in just a minute, folks. This is cool. I like talking about superfluous type things. So we'll be back.
CoCoTALK. CoCoTALK After Dark.
This is Randy Kindig of the Floppy Days podcast. I just love me some CoCo, and nobody covers it better than Steve Strobridge. You're listening to CoCoTALK.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me. It's Original Gamer Stevie Stro. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. All right, people. Gameplay goodness. Thank you so much. Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Gameplay goodness.
Are you ready for this?
Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Gameplay goodness.
Are you ready for this?
Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness.
This is how we like to do it.
Gameplay goodness. All right, people. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness. Gameplay goodness.
Yeah, you gotta call the CoCoTALK contact.
Yeah.
Drop it low
Gameplay goodness. All right, people. Gameplay goodness.
to the floor.
Gameplay goodness. Yeah. Gameplay goodness. Yeah. That's great.
Where can you catch all the latest news and information about the Tandy Color computer and compatibles? Oh yeah, talking about the CoCo Crew podcast. Dig it each month. Join John, Neil, and Mike as they lay down the latest news and information about the Radio Shack Tandy color computer and compatibles. Groove to interviews, tech segments, and discussions all about the Radio Shack Tandy color computer. Strut your fine self over to www.cococrew.org and start listening today. The CoCo Crew Podcast. Keeping it CoCo, dig?
CoCoTALK After Dark.
All right, well, we are back, and that was a little promo there for the CoCo Crew podcast, which just dropped today, if I'm not mistaken. I think the CoCo Crew podcast just went live for us to listen to today, so make sure you check that out. I did want to go back and look at a few other comments in the live stream that we in the live chat that we didn't get a chance to mention yet. So Andrew, I'd love for you to come on and tell us a little bit about your story, but you seem to have a lot of good Sega knowledge. I'd love to hear from you. Sega's one of my favorite systems. But he said the Sega Saturn had a reputation as being tough to program for, and they did a last-minute redesign to compete with the PlayStation's ability for 3D graphics. Said that I finally got my hands on one, and I love it. And I agree. Saturn was another one of my favorite systems too. He said he did, and then he continues to say they did make a lot of mistakes though. I think a good percentage of that was due to differences between Sega of America and Sega of Japan. And the Genesis was a huge seller in the U.S., but not very popular in Japan. Ken, Jason's brother, says the book Console Wars was great. Read about Sega and Nintendo, mostly Sega. Michael Newman says Dreamcast, still one of my favorite consoles of all time. I did not get that one. And I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Yeah, it's on my list. Ken says we got a Tandy 12-inch arcade. That's kind of cool. Richard Ivy says this is kind of badass. Well, thanks, Richard. And Russell says, hey, when are you guys going to get to the MC10? So
Never.
But yeah, it kind of became Sega Talk, which for me, that's not a bad thing. We also have some people joining us just recently, too. We should acknowledge author of Forest of Doom, Bruce Moore from O Canada. Hey, how you doing, Bruce?
I think he's having some audio problems.
Yes. And then author of Timberman for the Color Computer. We have Paul Thayer joining us again today. Paul, how are you?
Hey, what's up, guys? I just talked to Bruce when I called the wrong Skype line.
Ah, so you were the guy.
He should be here soon.
There you go. Yeah, so I also remember hearing some chatter in Scuttlebutt about the Dreamcast, because I believe Microsoft was involved with Sega on the Dreamcast. I believe they were helping do the embedded OS, and it was possibly using a version of...
Yes and no. There was talks in the beginning, but there was talks about running Windows CE on it.
Consumer Electronics Edition, yeah. But I had heard that Microsoft was working with them, and Microsoft being Microsoft, Microsoft did not help them in ways they could have, because they seized that as an opportunity for them to get into the console market, which ended up becoming the original Xbox. So I heard some nefarious things were going on behind closed doors from some insiders that, Microsoft almost helped sabotage, or maybe not sabotage, but just let the drowning person drown type of situation. So I don't know how true that is, but if you look at the original Xbox controller, it is almost identical to the Dreamcast controller in the shape and style and stuff like that. There was Bruce. Bruce came back holding up his Forest of Doom spooky tree. Hey, Bruce, welcome back. But I remember the Dreamcast being able to run Linux on that. The Dreamcast had an interesting optical drive that was... It was bigger than a CD, but it was before DVDs were standard, so it had about a 1 gigabyte optical drive, something like that. Whereas with CD became like 4 gigs or whatever, 4.5 gigs. Okay, so Michael says there was a Windows CE version that you could run on there of MAME. Yeah, Windows CE version of MAME. Interesting. Yeah, the original Xbox has been hacked and modded to run MAME and stuff like that too. Yeah, interesting. I never had the original Xbox. That's another one on my list. The Dreamcast and the OG Xbox are definitely on my list.
Yeah, another thing that kind of doomed the Dreamcast, if I'm remembering correctly, it was easy to pirate the CDs.
Ah, yeah, no copyright on that.
Oh, no, there was copyright. There
was
protection, and it's just that it was so easy to get around.
Hey, Bill Noble's joining us. Yeah, I found out the hard way when I just recently repurchased a Saturn. I naively assumed I could just go to any emulator site, download an ISO, and burn it. And it turns out there was actual copy protection on the CDs. And I had to do a soft mod, which I kind of figured out how to do that. So I can now burn ISOs and run them. But yeah, so I guess it was actually harder to get over copy protection on the Saturn than it was on the Dreamcast, apparently.
Yeah, and that's because it was so easy to pirate. Third party didn't want to create for it because there was so little money in the first place. The piracy just killed the market.
Yeah. There were some cool titles, though. Like, remember Crazy Taxi being one of the titles, and that was a fun game in the arcade. And that's where Sega and Nintendo were... they had an edge because they were making arcade games. Especially Sega. Sega was a pioneer in a lot of arcade games, and a lot of those made their way to their consoles. I was skeptical.
I wouldn't know anything about Sega and their arcade games.
Yeah, I was skeptical of Sony. Because I'm like, who's Sony? What is Sony? When Sony makes freaking TVs, what are they making a game system for? I went with the Saturn. I didn't gamble on Sony,
Well, Sony was making the sound chips for the Super Nintendo and the later systems still.
Yeah. I could not wrap my brain around that controller when it first came out, too. I was so used to the 3-button and 6-button layouts, A, B, C, X, Y, Z. The minute they had, like, square, circle, triangle, X... I'm like, what is this? Is this like an IQ test? I can't figure this out. I need ABC.
It was controller emojis. It's hard thinking back to what was going on there when Sony was brand new and nobody thought they would work. And Microsoft, nobody thought they would work, but Microsoft tried many times to get into the whole gaming thing. At one point, it proposed a platform for arcade games, which would be based on a Microsoft Windows operating system. And the idea was you could just swap out the software and maybe the controllers and have a whole new game. And at the time, the makers of these games, that was exactly what they didn't want. They wanted people to have to put it in a Nintendo cabinet with the Nintendo wiring harness and all that. They didn't want you to be able to just swap the games out and make it somebody else's. But they finally found something that worked in gaming, so good on them.
Yeah. And, they're still here. They're still here, Microsoft. Microsoft made hardware. I've had Microsoft mice, Microsoft keyboards, the Microsoft Sidewinder joysticks, even back in the 90s. They were making hardware. So it wasn't a huge leap for them to go from making accessories to making a system.
Well, these days they make systems. They make the Surface tablet, Surface book.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
Steve, do you remember Radio Shack's CD gaming system?
Boy. No, I can't say I do that well.
There was something Radio Shack sold. I'm trying to remember the year. It was probably around 93 or so, and it was the Video Information System, the Tandy VIS. It looked like a video cassette recorder with a CD slot, and it ran some version of Microsoft Windows, and it had all kinds. And it had all kinds of launch titles with it, Sherlock Holmes and interactive games like the Sega CD had, and the most annoying demo that ran in a loop repeatedly 25 feet from a little booth I had in a mall one summer. It just drove me nuts with an owl mascot. But it was their attempt to have a little home CD entertainment system, and came and went one season.
Wow, interesting.
Well, I mean, so many companies were trying to get in the market before and after the boom and bust, but even Apple got in there with the Pippin. Well, they never
Oh, yeah,
brought it to
the
market. Yeah.
And Commodore had one based on the Amiga, and I borrowed one from a friend of mine because you could hook up a mouse and a keyboard to it, and it was basically a full Amiga computer. I can't even remember what that one was called.
Well, I did work on a system. People weren't sure if it was going to turn out well or not. I mean, we saw things like CDI, and Philips was involved in that. They were also involved in the system. So was Sony and a lot of large companies. And you might have heard of it. It was called DVD.
DVD. I'm drawing a blank on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I was working on that one for a little bit. Matter of fact, years back when we talked about things, I had to remind myself I couldn't talk to you about it because I had a 10-year non-disclosure agreement. But when I was working at THQ, I was working on the stuff to make DVD so it could be a game system. So when you see things like as seen on TV, games for DVD, that's because of the work that I did.
Interesting.
Yeah, THQ was looking upon as another market they could go in for making video games and like that. And then they realized how expensive the production budget would be, so they stayed with the consoles.
Yeah. There were some interactive DVD, quote-unquote, games that were made, and I remember when the DVD spec was being kind of made to be known public, one of the things about it, it was, for the first time ever, it was a format that was designed to be completely the same on both an appliance and a computer. And so you could control the menus with a remote or with a mouse or with a keyboard. It was kind of almost like platform agnostic and platform compliant to whatever you ran this format on. It was supposed to work. And
those were the specs I was working on.
Yeah.
It was part of that. It was part of the user interface, what information the thing would keep track of. I had it so that you could do, keeps track of the scores for the games, or if somebody was taking a driver's test so that they could get rid of their ticket on their record. That was one of the things we definitely thought ahead of time about doing, where you could get this, you run through, it would actually upload to the server the results of your test and actually get your ticket removed off your record.
Wow. Well, I could use that right now.
Well, they did have Dragon's Lair. Dragon's Lair and Space Ace and all those came out in DVD editions that you could play on just a regular DVD player, which is pretty amazing considering how much hardware was in the Laserdisc arcade game.
Sure.
And it was, a fun thing to do, but I had to keep my mouth shut for a long 10 years. I couldn't talk about working on it.
Wow.
But I still remember the biggest blow up at the conference was naming it, as you brought on a second or two ago, about being both for the consumer devices for playing movies and then using in the computer for data storage. The original name of DVD stood for digital video disc.
Right.
Simple,
they changed
right?
it to versatile, right? Is what the end
Yeah,
of it
they changed it to versatile. And then there was such a riot in front. They said, okay, folks, DVD stands for DVD. It stands for nothing. It's just 3 letters put together to represent this device. That's it.
Yeah.
And that got everybody to stop complaining, but because I remember we weren't getting anything done during the conference as far as specs, because everybody was yelling about it's virtual. Oh, that's so terrible.
Virtual, yeah. That kind of brings back some memories. If you think about it, any new technology that first came out, it seemed like $500 was that magic ticket price, because I remember, the original DVD players, they were about $500, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, no. The first ones, and I bought one of them, were $1,200.
Oh, wow. But I mean, I think even probably early CD players might have been about $500 when they first came out. But all this new technology, if you were an early adopter, you paid top dollar, and you basically got like the beta version of the technology when it was shipped on day one.
Remember, when you're on the bleeding edge, it's your pocketbook that bleeds.
That is good. That's so true, though. DVD was neat. And it's so funny, too, when you look at all these formats, we look at it even reminds me of the old remember the old TV commercials where you're watching a commercial on TV and they're showing you other TVs and they're like, does your TV look as good as these TVs do? And you're like such a dumbass. You're like, oh no, wow, that one in the screen looks much better than mine. But when you look at these formats, like we watched VHS for years and we were happy, damn it, you know, and then all of a sudden DVD comes out and you're like, well, what was I thinking? What was wrong with my eyes? All these years I've been lying to myself, and you thought DVD was the bomb. And then you have Blu-ray and you're like, wow, that DVD is crap. It's just everything that comes out makes you just reevaluate everything that you were complacent with for that period of time.
See, I was one of those guys, you'd go over to his house and he would have that collection of laser discs that you would have to, you'd put in and play, and then halfway through the movie you had to flip it.
Yeah, the two-sided. Yeah, I had some of those. Yeah, that was kind of
I had a girlfriend that complained about that. Why are you having to flip it? I don't have to do that with my videotape. I go, look how much clearer this is.
Yeah, and
but you still have to flip it.
I don't have to rewind.
But even Laserdisc did get better as the technology improved, and you could get better players that could handle the better options they were doing and stuff like that. And not only were they improving the video, they're improving the audio, and that was nice.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's when we start, you know, if you look at all the format wars that have happened over the years, where we had like Betamax versus VHS, CD, we had a mini disc that didn't quite take off. When it came to memory sticks, there was compact flash, there was the Sony card, there was the SD card. And then when high definition came out, there was DVD. What was it called? DVD HD or HD DVD?
HD DVD.
Right, versus Blu-ray, right?
I got a little story for you about with Sony with all this. They blew with Betamax. They did not get the standard, and they saw how much JVC made with VHS. And then they tried to corner the standard with their little flash drive sticks.
What was that? Memory Duo or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And it didn't take off because nobody was going to pay the licensing fee on those. So when it came to, and of course, DVD was a consortium that included Sony and Philips, so they make their little bit of money there. But when they're looking at the high def type of format, because remember, DVD was only standard def.
Right.
They faked it with letterboxing, but Sony was not going to lose out. They weren't going to lose out on getting royalties for all the movies. So they did everything they could. They gave away so much to Disney. They gave so much away to porn.
Porn, yep.
Yes. Porn is why VHS won.
Yep, and it's why the Blu-ray won too.
Betamax.
Yep.
Yeah. And so basically, they were not going to lose out. Now, DVD could be made on the same equipment that made standard DVD discs. So no, you wouldn't have to tool up. You had machines that could already do it. But the one advantage Blu-ray did have is you could store twice the amount of information.
Right.
And so between Disney using the standard and twice the storage, they won out. So now every time you're buying a Blu-ray disc, you're paying a little money to Sony.
Right. And another brilliant thing too was baking it into the PlayStation 3. Because back when Blu-ray was about $500 for a standalone console, you could spend $500 and get a game system and a Blu-ray player. And it was one of the better, because of the GPU and the PlayStation 3, it upscaled standard definition discs very well. So it was a pretty premier Blu-ray player for an out-of-the-box release.
Well, the other thing too, PlayStation 2 had a DVD player. Nobody else did.
Right. True.
As far as playing. Eventually, the Xbox 360 had a DVD player, but not the original Xbox.
Right. Yep.
As we talk about these topics, do you realize how many of the things that became standards Radio Shack tried to get their paws on? There was the CD entertainment systems with Tandy VIS. There was mini disc and digital audio tape. So Tandy partnered with somebody and had something called the digital compact cassette, which was a cassette, like a regular audio cassette that was recorded digitally, or you could put a regular cassette tape in it and still use it like a normal cassette player, which was actually kind of cool. And there was something called a Palm Pilot. Radio Shack had the Tandy Zoomer, which had handwriting recognition like an Apple Newton. They were really trying to get into all of these standards, and even the biggest players in the industries couldn't make it. And I'm not sure why Fort Worth kept trying.
Yeah, that is pretty
Well, they did
interesting.
pretty good with the computers for a little bit until IBM got in the market, and that changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a few people in the live chat too saying, kind of echoing what Steve was saying, that the fact that the PlayStation 2 had the DVD, so it was also a combo DVD player, was a good selling point, and some people saying that's the main reason. Oh, but Brian Joyce, I want to get back to something you mentioned earlier too. He was mentioning a Microsoft game called Fury 3 that he really enjoyed that required the Sidewinder joystick. Does anybody remember that game? Because the name rings a bell, but I can't think of what the game was. And while you think about that one, there was a game I had in the Windows 98 days that was really cool. Microsoft had a Sidewinder joystick that was like 3D gyroscopic, and that sold with Motocross Madness, and you can like do your jumps, and then you could like steer your dirt bike in the air with your joystick, kind of like what you do now with a Wiimote or with other things like that. But this Sidewinder motion joystick, back in the days of Windows 98, I thought was pretty cool, and it worked very well with that Motocross Madness game. I had a lot of fun with that.
Now, that basically allowed you to twist the handle left or right.
It was motion sensitive. You could tilt it forward or backwards or left and right. It was almost like it had a gyroscopic sensor in it, whatever that term is now that the smartphones have. The accelerometer sensor is what it had in there.
Well, how about this for an oldie that kind of did that? It was called the La Stick from Datasoft. The Stick. It was a motorcycle grip handle with a cord coming out the bottom with a button on top. And as you tilted left and right, forward and back, that would move your joystick forward and back, left and right.
I do not remember that.
And it was all gravity based because it used micro switches. Mercury-based micro switches.
Oh, so the mercury became like the sliding of the metal across the contacts.
You got it.
That's a smart way to do it.
Yep, that was the Le Stick.
Le Stick sounds like it's French. Yep, Le Stick.
It sold very well, but as laws started coming up against mercury products,
Poison.
It had to be discontinued because we found more and more states we couldn't sell it in. First one was California.
Right, because you can't dispose of it. It's not environmentally friendly.
That's exactly it. Because in California, we had to have a recycling program.
Yeah.
Because it contained lead.
Yeah. Listen, lead paint never killed me as a kid. Somebody is asking a question, which was popped into my head a little bit earlier too, but does anybody remember the DivX format, where it was kind of like it was like a biodegradable thing? You could rent it, play it once, and not have to return it. I think it was Circuit City, I think, had that, and there was another. We have a chain here called Brandsmart USA, I think, that had that too. Anybody remember DivX discs?
Oh, I remember it, and they had so many problems with it. People would, not like the fact that, you get the disc, you could play it as many times as you want, as long as you did within 48 hours or something like that.
Okay.
And what would happen is the package would get damaged in transit and would already be bad.
Yeah, it was weird because that DivX format that was on those things later became a computer format of the same name but no relation. I remember that for a while though. I didn't quite completely grasp it. I remember it had something to do with where you could rent this and play it, but you didn't have to return it because it wasn't going to play after a certain amount of time or a certain number of plays or something.
Yeah, after the oxygen got into the layers of the disc, it basically became more opaque and couldn't see the pits in the material. The other reason why it got crushed by the industry, it was considered not very ecological.
Oh, okay. Another one that's Yeah, another one that's just not good for the environment.
Yeah, just like that scene in Back to the Future 2, where you've got all these laser discs bundled up behind the DeLorean. Cricket, cricket.
Yeah. I had to step away to let my cat out. Yeah, have a drink. Have a drink. What are we drinking tonight, by the way? Jason, what are you drinking tonight?
A little bit of vodka and some cola.
Vodka and cola. Your new Forest of Doom mug. Hold that up for everybody to see. Yes, very cool.
He's still a douche.
The chalice of bravery.
The chalice of bravery. Yes.
Yes.
We're all good.
So anybody watching who's not familiar with Forest of Doom, very cool role-playing game for the color computer. Bruce Moore, the author of that game, is with us right now. And a couple cool things about Forest of Doom. Number one, it was released by buying a physical paper strategy guide. You bought the book, then you got the download link for the game. So that was pretty unique for a new retro game. And then the other thing that was kind of cool was a contest for the first person to survive the Forest of Doom to get a mug. That happened to be Paul Fiscarelli. And due to shipping challenges, not everybody got their games on time. So there was a second round contest, and we did a live stream marathon. And there was about half a dozen of us all vying for this bloody mug. And this douchebag up here, Jason, was the guy who ended up getting it. So no hard feelings. No hard feelings here. So
No, not at all. I just don't hold back, Steve. Tell us what you really think.
So, but it was fun. It was fun. I don't know if it was that like 4-hour session, a marathon session that night when we were playing that game.
I think it was.
It was insane.
Yeah, I think I was playing for about 2 hours and 40-some minutes just myself, and you died 3 times. And I started late, so.
But who's counting? 2 hours and 47 minutes and 13 seconds, and
I think it was more like 12 seconds. But
yeah. Well, again, who's counting, right? So.
You can still get the book at fod.gracenote.ca and play. I know there's new people joining the community all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a UK sale just today, actually.
Yeah.
27th. Today's the 27th. Yeah, I had a UK sale today. So, what do you know?
That's great. That's great. Here, I'm going to switch to my cam reel for a second here to make the picture bigger. But yeah, so this is what the book looks like. This is the Forest of Doom package, the strategy guide. So it's a nice printed manual. And I'm not going to show you the page where you get the free download link, although send me a side message and maybe we can work something out. But on the inside of the book here, it kind of very much reminds me of the old Dungeon Master's Guide or the Monster Manual. So you got a little bit of a backstory. You got some stats on the creatures that you needed to fight. So this was a pretty neat new offering that came out towards the end of last year. It was November you released this, Bruce?
Yeah.
Right. And then another one that just came out.
You should have read it. If you read it, you might have.
Pick a finger. And another cool product that came out recently too, and Paul's on the call with us too. But Paul Thayer created Timberman for the Color Computer 3, and again a nice glossy manual showing you how to play the game. And the cool thing about Paul's distribution method is that Paul's distributing Timberman on an SD card. And for those of us who have a color computer, we have an SD card reader that we can just pop this into the side and slap it in and run the game. So Timberman was distributed on SD card, where that was one of the ways you could have got it. So it's kind of cool that. Go ahead,
Did you
Grant.
read that manual?
I did. I read the manual. Yeah.
But who still beat you?
Douchebag. Yeah, douchebag Jason.
Notice a trend here.
Wow.
So reading does me no good, basically. And okay, so Andrew says, I watched the entire Forest of Doom live stream. I think I started to hallucinate after the 3-hour point.
I didn't even watch the whole thing.
Yeah. I have another video that's in the can that I haven't edited yet, but I was playing Canyon Climber. And so another Forest of Doom rage moment, or like the Timberman rage thing, where I just got killed by these freaking goats so many times. And so I was like hell bent because I couldn't like cycle through everything twice. I got to the top of the third canyon every single time or close to it, but I could never like run through the whole game twice. And then I was like, well, shit, that's now my goal. I've got to beat this game twice. And after like 3 hours on the first day I recorded it, I just couldn't do it. And then like 2 days later on my laptop at school, I finally did it and I recorded it. So I'm going to edit all that together. And then I've probably got I got 4 minutes of gameplay and probably 20 minutes of raging that I'll be able to splice into the end of that. But that frickin' Canyon Climber is a bitch of a game, man. I've never hated goats so much in my life. So yeah, but that was a fun game playing that Timberman. And I still have to. It's on my list. I've got to unlock all the characters and get everything. So I'll get them as my time permits. Oh well, we've been talking about a lot of non-CoCo things tonight. It's kind of fun, right? This is like a normal Discord session. When you get in Discord, we talk about just about anything. So now this is like, we should really call this Discord After Dark.
We don't have this snazzy Latin music playing.
Hey, listen. Yeah. It's a fancy production. How you doing over there, Bill Noble?
Actually, pretty good. And I actually do have a question for Alan Huffman.
Okay, go for it.
Alan, that Xymodem firmware that you actually found for ESP8266, the GitHub right now is broken. So, do you have an actual copy that I can actually flash onto my firmware, because I've successfully done it? And
well, the Roger Taylor figured out what to comment out. The guy's in the process of adding some new features, and so Roger ran into the same problem. I downloaded it again, ran into the same problem. Roger actually figured out what to change to make it work. So if you drop him a message on CoCo on a chip, he can probably post what things you have to comment out to make it build. Okay,
yeah, because last night I talked to him and it was broken and I couldn't get a working copy, so I was wondering.
Shareware's so wonderful.
Yeah.
No, Bill, you're on a pretty good conversation flow with Roger Taylor, aren't you? You guys are conversing quite frequently.
Yeah, pretty much every couple of days. We have a good run of maybe an hour or two.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we're monopolizing stuff here because we got a lot of our normal CoCo consortium here who hasn't been speaking. You guys want to chime in on anything, even if it's CoCo related? CoCo's still, and it's all things retro, so we can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about tonight.
Well, talking about the Sega Genesis, I am seriously considering doing something for it. Kind of on my bucket list of things.
That would be cool.
Actually bought one of the new flash packs because it would show on the HDMI out, just to be able to do the cartridge and display it on the new TV easily.
Are you talking about that new At Games Sega console, the HD version?
Yes.
Okay, and that is fairly compatible because it does run a majority of cartridges. I believe it's still kind of either hardware or software-based emulation, but it's fairly compatible.
Yeah, it's a little slow compared, I guess, to some other systems out there that run stuff that I hear, but it seems to play fairly well.
Right, like the Retron 5 or something might be one too.
Yeah, but it's nice. I can just plug it into my flat screen.
Yeah,
monitor, and I'm running. Of course, it's really weird seeing, all those pixels throwing up on the 43-inch.
Yeah, no doubt.
4K TV.
So, what type of thing are you thinking about making for it?
I've been debating on what to do. Part of me said, hey, just take something I've done on the CoCo and then just take it over.
So you're talking about a game, or?
Yeah, I'm thinking about some kind of game.
Mm-hmm. Now, those folks that are out there currently doing Sega development. There are people making new games and like that. Do we have any aftermarket cartridge emulators? There's got to be, right?
Yes, I think there is. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's plans out there you can order and get, to just drop your EPROMs on it too. But you develop it, in the emulator and then drop it on a cartridge to make sure it runs on the real hardware.
Yeah. They do have an SD card reader cartridge. I know that.
And I also have the small handheld Sega Genesis from Games, and it actually will allow you to run the stuff on the handheld Sega on the off a SD card.
Yeah, I got one of those. I got it's right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's just some of the craziness I've been thinking about, because I always wanted to do and never.
Is the sound any better on the HD version? Because the sound emulation on the handheld in my earlier console is god awful.
I really haven't paid that much attention to the sound. I haven't played it that much.
Yeah, because when you play some of those built-in games with some iconic soundtracks like Streets of Rage or Shinobi or even Sonic, you could just hear that the instruments are completely off on a lot of those. And that was it was like nails on a chalkboard for me listening to those things, because that music is like in my brain. It's like in my bloodstream, growing up on that stuff. And when I heard the At Games consoles, I was like, oh my God, just shoot me, stab my eardrums, So
yeah, and my hearing isn't really the best either. So there's things you guys will probably hear that I'd probably not hear on it.
What'd you say?
My hearing is not the best.
What, can you say that again, please?
I guess neither is yours. But I do have in storage somewhere original Nomad.
Oh, neat.
And a battery pack unit to go with it. You could have an add-on battery pack to do extra. I forget exactly what all it did. You could plug it in, but I had that. But so, yeah, I'm considering doing something on a game just to do it.
That's cool.
And the other thing I'm playing with right now is I'm looking at decoding the Atari flashback joysticks. Okay. There's some information out there. I could probably just copy the Arduino code if I wanted to do a lot of setup. But a couple things I think would be cool to do with that.
When you say decoding, are you talking about the wireless ones?
Yes.
You were going to be referring to the RF-based wireless ones or the earlier IR-based ones?
The Atari ones for the flashbacks are all IR.
Okay, so they never came up with a better version than that, because I know on the new Sega one they came up with RF-based wireless.
Yeah, unless they've done one this year that they switched, because I got last year's version.
Mm-hmm.
Last year's version they were still IR.
Okay.
Okay, and so I haven't, upgraded to this year's version.
Okay, yeah, because they come out with one all the time. Yeah, they do have an HD version of that one now too. I think they call that the Atari Gold or something like that. So.
Yeah, and that might tempt me, on getting it. But our local stores didn't have to do this. We actually to get the Sega, I had to order online. Okay, to get it, because nobody locally had it.
What is Ken saying down here? He says the Bud Light commercials, Jason, as you drink from the chalice of victory. Oh, there you go, John. You got it. Yeah. Yes. Nice. HDMI 2.4 gigahertz wireless controllers. Nice.
So the primary reason for getting this one was, again, for the HDMI output. And I don't have enough room in this apartment. We're hoping to get us a different place sometime this year.
And then you can hopefully test out some of your code if you're going to start making some programs for it too.
And so, and of course, it uses the TI sound chip plus a Yamaha music chip. So it has the wired controllers, the one I got, plus the wireless.
Nice.
Okay. And so those are the kind of the things there. But it's something I wanted to do. We never had the money to get into, official development on the systems, though I wanted to back in the day. The closest we ever got to it was actually we got to go to a Consumer Electronics show in Chicago and got to talk to some of the Trammell brothers about the Atari Jaguar. But there's no way at that point in time we had money to be able to invest in it and to get into the systems.
Well, that's the thing.
Back in the Midwest is a big different story than out west.
Yeah, back in the day, I still remember Barry Thompson over at Tandy, and he would get upset at people that said it was so expensive to develop for the CoCo. And really, developing for the CoCo, you just had to buy a freaking CoCo. You didn't have to buy development systems and licensed software and use cross-assemblers and yada, yada, da. And he was just, you can't believe. I go, yeah, I know. Everything I've got, I put together cheaply and cheaper than any other system. And I can code up the wazoo on it. And, like somebody new wants to develop for the CoCo. They said, okay, how much is your development system? Well, we sell this assembler cartridge and we have this manual and you start there. And he goes, well, what about the hardware? You go buy a CoCo. I mean, we're going to have to go buy a CoCo if we're going to develop for you. And you just look at, if you develop for an Atari, you're going to have to go buy a frickin' Atari or Commodore 64 or whatever. You're going to have to buy that too. And they go, I guess you're right. But that was the biggest complaint he had all the time, is about how expensive it was to develop for the CoCo. And it was the cheapest system.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's how come, we picked the CoCo. It was actually looking at the most powerful system as far as the processor, and one that would look like it was the most accessible at the time. And, because we had to go for the lowest budget. We didn't have a lot of money to do it, And so my brother Charlie and myself, we did this things together. And my first commercial game was actually a game I wrote for a Christmas present for.
Well, that's the thing. Like, for example, somebody that's going to create something for the Sega Genesis, unless they know a lot of the ins and outs, you'll load up that game, put it on the cartridge, it ain't going to work. Because first, you got to send the letters Sega down the throat of the video controller to get the thing operational in the first place. That's part of their security check. Then you have to be able to throw the game into, you've got stuff that do sound and I/O. Well, that lives out on the Z80 processor. You got to throw that stuff down its throat. You got all this stuff that you got to do to get that thing working. The CoCo, you just put the program in there and let's just talk to the hardware, just like you're talking to the hardware of the PC or any other system. No special stuff at all.
So how did they do it? Did you have to have a development environment and an external system to make Sega games back in the day?
Oh, yeah. And you had a completely different system if you did something for the Super Nintendo. And you had to have sometimes these development systems were $8,000 to $10,000.
Wow.
And we're talking 1980s cash for, that price.
Wow. We just got a wow. So, yeah, we're getting some emojis here. We have not upset anybody this evening, so I guess we got to try a little bit harder. We've got no sads and no angers.
All right, we'll talk about the MC-10.
So, yeah, I'm just watching some little smiley faces and stuff go floating across the screen there a minute ago. Hey, they're just popping up. It looks like fireworks now showing up on the screen here on Facebook. They're just exploding. Facebook is funny that way. Yeah, I always wonder what that was like. Like, how did they make the software for those, 16-bit and 32-bit systems? Because they weren't computers. You kind of still needed a computer to make software for the game system.
And then you would transfer the stuff over. But even in there, there are things about the CoCo that are so much better than these console games. When you talk to the memory, you can talk to it whenever you want. They do interlacing so that the CPU and the microprocessor don't exactly hit the memory at the same time. It's like looking through blinds. They're interleaved between each other. But in a game console like Super Nintendo, Genesis, you can only send the data over during the V blank. That's the bottom of the display. And you had a limit of about 6,000 bytes that you could transfer as far as graphics every frame.
That's about
So
6K. Same
Yeah.
as the CoCo screen, really.
Yeah. So now they did have DMA, which made the transfer very efficient and got over during the V blank, but you could only transfer about 6K of data.
Okay.
So you just imagine how much data had to be transmitted and thought about when you're doing blast processing, like on the Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have definitely, now we've switched some emotions around here. We've gotten some sads and some angries. We lost all the love that we had.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was, I've been enthralled with video game stuff since the beginning. And before there was the internet, I would read all the magazines all the time and stuff. And being a Sega guy, I just remember reading about all the R&D that Sega was putting into their production studios and stuff. Like when Sega CD came out, they messed around a lot with this thing called Q-Sound, which was three-dimensional spatial audio, which I thought was really cool. And Sonic CD was one of the first games that came out with that, where the actual soundtrack was spatially spread apart. And, they were talking about all the studios that they were building to, record original music and the artwork and the cartoons. And they were like building production companies around their video games. It was pretty neat for a period of time there.
Well, like Alan was talking about before, about these different audio systems that and media formats like that Dandy was doing. They were doing quadraphonic in the early days, and then they went into some of these other Q sounds and stuff like that as they came out.
We have a question about V-Blank from Ken, who's Jason's brother. It says, is that when the beam is returning to the top?
It's when it's going from the bottom to the top.
Okay.
It's not doing anything on the screen.
So does that mean with those systems you couldn't do any of the screen hacks, like kind of like what Simon Jonason's doing, where he's changing palettes on each scan line and things like that?
There was very, very limited stuff you can do. During the H-blank, you could change palettes. As a matter of fact, sometimes, like in the Super Nintendo, they had special little things that would run that allow you to update things on the H-blank too. They were hardware HDMI stuff going on, and it would transfer data from from memory into the registers. Some of the systems got very advanced, and they had something called a display list. This was something key to the Amiga, because you would also, the Atari had it too, where you could tell it to change line by line where it was getting its graphics information.
Yeah, Amiga called that hold and modify, ham or something like that.
Yep. So yeah, they see, that's the thing, is the CoCo had a great processor, but a very vanilla graphic system.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And these other guys, to try and do this arcade style graphics, had sprites, characters, HDMI, and these other things. So they put a lot of work in the graphics area.
What should the CoCo have had for graphics chips? Steve, what would you have preferred?
Well, I think sprites would have been better. The reason why, the other thing that people would say, oh, there should have been a blitter. What a blitter does is, at the speed that you can copy into RAM, you would be drawing up an object. And yes, that does help quite a bit. But the thing is, if you have a sprite, you have an image that you can put on the screen anywhere you want. And to move the image, you don't have to redraw it on the screen. You just simply give it a new XY position, and that image moves to that on the next frame. And that's much better and faster. So that's really what we should have. Sprites. Character-based graphics would have been very handy too.
Do you need
Because a lot
special
of the games-
hardware for a sprite? Sorry, special hardware for a sprite, or what? How would you get
You need
sprites?
different hardware. It's not special. You need different. Think
Oh.
about a video display. It's done line by line. So you got the very top line, and you're putting information on that line. Well, you can grab some of that information from the background graphics, the background graphics data. But what it would do is it would figure out what sprites were also on that line and where to put their information. So it basically build the screen line by line. Now, in the case of a lot of these systems, you reuse the sprites because you would have a sprite that's up at the top. But a little bit later, you could reuse the sprite again later on the screen. So you may have only had 8 sprites available, but you could have 20 or 30 of them up there, no problem.
Is that why some of the games, they were kind of blinky and flickery because they were being reused in the same
scan
pass?
line?
Same scan line, yeah.
The notorious Pac-Man for the Atari 2600.
Yeah.
They were flicking back and forth between them.
So I always knew sprites was basically a hardware way to create a foreground object that was non-destructive of the background. But how do sprites handle collision detection? How do you know when a sprite hits another sprite or when a sprite hits something in the background?
Well, on some hardware that did have that, it's simply the fact that you have certain colors that would be in the part of the background, and then you'd have the sprite. And if that color of the background hit something in the sprite that was a collision color, a flag would be lit. Now, when I was developing games, not once did I ever use that. My game actually did the collision detect mathematically between the different objects of the game. So I didn't rely on the graphics hardware.
Okay.
Besides, games like Zaxxon, you couldn't do that.
Right.
Because things colliding in a three-dimensional display, you couldn't do that.
Were you involved in the Super Zaxxon that made its way on the 32X or anything like that?
No, the Super Zaxxon was actually the original Zaxxon and also got called Zaxxon 2. It's the one with the dragon and the pastel colors you're talking about, right?
I don't remember. I just know there was a 3D more 3D-ish version of Zaxxon that was maybe exclusive to the Sega 32X, and I think they called it Super Zaxxon or Zaxxon 32 or something. I don't know.
And Zaxxon 32 was a unique character, specifically designed. See, actually, the way Zaxxon worked is the original Zaxxon that they brought to America that was not testing well in the arcade was a pastel-based color system with space dragons you had to battle. Space dragons. Well, they were more into fantasy back there in Japan. Here in America, we're red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
And black. We like these space colors.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is we want a space theme. Hey, we went to the moon. We're proud of that. We're going to have really space stuff. That's part of the psyche of America.
Yeah.
So I got rid of the dragon and made it a robot. And then I put in a shadow below the ship when you're flying over the fortress so you knew how high you were.
Right. Brilliant.
That wasn't in there. And there's a few other changes I did here and there into the game. And it tested much better. So that's how we actually got the rights to Zaxxon. It wasn't just the royalties we were going to pay them. We actually took a game that wasn't testing well and made it play better. So we got the game.
Neat. So you did that on the CoCo first, or did you do it for the arcade version?
Arcade first.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's how we got the right for the CoCo and the other games system. So I led the development on all the systems. And I did the CoCo version. There was one that was done for Apple, another one for the Atari. I'm not sure about the Commodore 64. I think another company did that one.
It was a pretty iconic game. And even today, there's not that many games like it.
What processor did the original arcade run on?
A Z80.
Z80. Okay.
It had two graphic systems. It had a bitmap graphic system similar to the CoCo, but all the information was read out of a ROM, and that did the background that didn't change. Then overlaid on top of that was your standard arcade character graphics, where it's basically, like the text that you have on the CoCo on a text screen, but these are programmable characters. So what they would do is they would put down all the characters as blank. Then when they drew something on the screen, they would put down the characters they needed for that spot, draw the actual image in those characters, and that's how it got there. They didn't have sprites in that arcade game.
So it was basically like a text-based character on a hardware background.
Except for that, the text characters were programmable, and you had 16 colors.
Yeah. Wow.
That's basically how most of the character graphic systems work, except for nowadays they are much larger. Instead of like on the CoCo, it's like 32 characters across for a 32 character screen. Well, actually the screen is more like 128 characters across, and it only displays 32 of them. That's how those systems work, and that's how they get the scrolling. Because you would tell it, you would tell it how many dots offset you were, and it would build it for you.
So I got a question here. If the CoCo 3 has got its high-res text screen, which is all character-based, and apparently you can modify those characters. So could you feasibly do that sort of thing on the CoCo 3 text screen?
You can't modify You cannot modify the characters that are in ROM on the CoCo 3.
Huh.
Now you may have seen.
Funny.
It's
funny you bring this up. Right now, Roger Taylor is going to put this in so you can take the same type of fonts that HPrint uses in the graphics and modify the ones in the virtual CoCo on a chip ROM to let us do that on the 32-column screen like that hardware add-on does, and on the high-res hardware text screens, which would be kind of cool.
Well, the only limit, though, is with the Gimme and the originals video display generators, the texts are two-color, background and primary. And in the case of what we did with the Sega Genesis and Nintendo, they were 16-color most of the time.
Right. And I know the characters in the VDG you can't change, but I'm talking about the high res, like the width 40, width 80 text screen.
Yes, those are from the Gimme. Those are ROMs.
And you can't modify those. I thought that doesn't.
No, what you've seen is text modes where people have emulated it using high-res graphics.
Oh, they just draw. Okay.
Yeah, there's an HPrint command, and there's a loadable font in the ROM that it uses to put the same type of character set on the graphic screens. And I used those fonts for my banner program way back when, because there was tons of fonts available, but they don't work on the hardware screen.
Right, and I did a program that you can edit those and load it in. Is actually two fonts in the ROMs for the high res.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just that part of that's the limitation of how fast everything can be done and what can be read from ROM and RAM. There's a limit on how much memory can go to the video display generator and how much can go to the CPU and everything that's going on. There's a bandwidth limit. Now, the way they got around that in these game systems is that the video memory can only be accessed during the VBlank, and it can be accessed 100%. When the display is going on, when the graphic unit is actually displaying the stuff on the screen, 100% of the video RAM is being used by the video graphic system. The main processor can't touch. If it does, you get sparklies on the screen.
That was the 86 Gimme glitch.
That was just
That's just
timing.
Gimme in general. Okay.
And that's just the Gimme timing and like that. But yeah, it would cause problems. So, yeah, you had to, only talk to it during that V blank. Otherwise, it just screw up.
Right. Brian Joyce is asking a question that Nick Marentes actually answered today on CoCoTALK. He said, why did Tandy do that? Why does the PAL CoCo not have composite colors? Yeah, Nick kind of talked about that today and demonstrated that. So watch the replay there if you can. This kind of goes back to why did Tandy do that, or why didn't Tandy do that? So it seems like there's a lot of things that we could benefit from with, some hardware assists, like reprogrammable character sets or that you could use for tiles and things like that. So that would be kind of cool.
Of course, the way the CoCo is designed, let's say you had reprogrammable characters, they would have to be in their own memory. It wouldn't be part of the main memory system.
Okay. All right, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back, and we'll continue with the random retro talk. I'm having fun with this. I don't know about you guys, but I'm digging it. We'll be back in just a minute here, people. I'll run a couple commercials if anybody has to pee. All right, so we'll run about 2-3 commercials. Give us all a bio break. So we'll be back in just a minute, folks.
CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark.
Hello, this is Grant Leedy with CoCoTALK. Got your CoCo 3 yet?
My fellow Americans, Australians, Canadians, Europeans, and all of you ands, I'm calling on all y'all to help us make the world great again by visiting the Retro Swag Shop at 8bit256.com, where you can get yourself a coffee mug like this with a little cute cartoon character that says, I'm a Coco Nut. You could also get yourself a coffee mug like this with a Color Computer 3 that says, I'm a Coco Nut. You could get yourself a deluxe travel mug like this with the CoCoTALK logo on it. You might even be able to get yourself a DVD like this with over 2 hours of gameplay goodness. It is time for us to rise up and make the world great again by enjoying some quality retro merchandise and CoCo nostalgia. So please visit 8bit256.com and let's make the world great for the color computer. Thank you very much.
What's going on, everybody? The original gamer Stevie Stroh here, and I want to talk to you about I'mACoconut.com. If you love the color computer like I love the color computer, then you got to visit I'mACoconut.com, your one-stop shop for all of your Tandy color computer links needs. There you'll find links to blogs and podcasts and project sites and emulators and downloads and groups and communities. If you love the color computer, head on over to I'mACoconut.com. That's IMACoconut.com. Tell them the original gamer Stevie Stroh sent you. CoCo forever, people.
Only the bravest souls enter. Only the most cunning return. Defeat innumerable monsters to ransom the king's scepter, stolen by the evil wizard. Your sword, shield, and wits are your only allies. Pray you find a magical inn as your only respite in the forest of doom.
For the Tandy Color Computer 1, 2, and 3.
November 2017, if you dare.
This is Ron's Garage. This is the place. And it's on CoCoTALK. It was Stevie Stroh. And a cast of crazies that love this machine. Either one. Either. It's awesome.
CoCoTALK. CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark.
All right. right, and we are back, and hopefully everybody had a good old draining of the lizard there. What else was going on here in the live chat here? So just getting back to, okay, what Andrew was saying. I remember the Super Zaxxon arcade game having the Dragon Boss. I don't know if they ever made that one for the home versions, though. Brian Joyce was commenting on our question about high-resolution printing on the CoCo 3. He says, not on the text screens. You can modify the characters in the graphics screens with the HPrint command. And then Brian says, I haven't finished watching the replay on our earlier CoCoTALK today where we talked about the composite output. Then Andrew says, I think a lot of questions about the Tandy can be answered with because they didn't want to spend the money on it.
So true.
It don't get no truer than that. Squeeze the nickel. Yeah, I learned a lot reading that book, the Underdog book, the colorful history of the Tandy's Underdog computer. And it seemed like they said, okay, here's the price. This is the price we want to sell it for. Here's how much profit margin we want to make. Now, engineer based on these specs, as long as we can make this much profit at this price. Go, have at it.
Well, it's like the CoCo 3, the only reason why they got the authorization to make the CoCo 3 was they could make it cheaper than the current CoCo 2.
Yeah, lucky for us, right? Hey, Nick is back. G'day, Nick.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good.
Miss anything?
Not at all. We've just been sitting here waiting for you.
So is it safe to say that their penny pinching is what caused their fall?
Actually, the exact opposite. Because they were watching their pennies, they could keep the computer profitable longer than some of the other systems out there.
And keep in mind, they had some tremendous growth with the Tandy 1000 series. They really were doing very, very good until the little $200 and $300 generic clones came out and basically decimated the market for everybody.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, it had to do with what they had for software. Now, most of the CoCo software was $20 to $40. And true, ROM packs were small. They didn't take up much space on the pegboard. But still, the stores were limited with the software that they could sell on the pegboard. And they could get 2 to 3 times the price for the stuff on the PC. Plus, people were coming in and asking for the software they had for these PCs that they weren't even selling.
The almighty dollar seems to be the limiting factor of a lot of things.
Well, remember, the corporations are responsible to their shareholders first.
Mm-hmm.
Even Disney.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Disney had an interesting relationship with Color Computer Software. Was that directly with Tandy, or was that all through Sierra Online that they did that relationship? We had a lot of Disney titles, though.
The Sierra Online stuff was definitely that way. Disney had interesting ideas when it came to software. I remember when we were first talking to Datasoft trying to get the rights, use the Disney characters, and we drew up some of the characters on the graphics, and they couldn't believe how bad the computer graphics looked for those Disney characters. Well, you know, you're talking about 128 dots across. They're not going to look very good.
Mm-hmm.
But they said, come on, we've got this movie we're working on, and it's absolutely beautiful, and the characters look so real like that. And of course, they're talking about Tron.
Another groundbreaking movie.
Yeah, it's not going to be a one-for-one translation. Trust me. With especially when you're using Cray computers and spending millions of dollars to make it.
Super computing, super rendering is always going to trump what a single system can do in real time. What is Jim Gary saying here? Jim Gary says, Tandy kept the CoCo compatible from 1981 through 1986. Some compromise was inevitable. I guess for backwards compatibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Andrew's agreeing with a lot of things that we're talking about in the Underdog book. Says that it was all about, the main takeaway he got from the book was that it made me wonder how their profit margins compared to other companies. I wonder about that. I wonder what Apple's profit line was like,
Apple's profit line was always high.
Yeah.
The profit line was so high. They had this scheme in California that every computer that they would donate to the schools, they would get double tax credit.
Wow.
They literally would make money every time they donated a computer to the school, because that tax credit would go against the taxes they had to pay for the other computers that they were selling.
Wow. Wow.
It didn't go through, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I think that really helped cement Apple's place in history, was by, pretty much giving them away to schools, because everybody in the school had an Apple.
Oh,
and
they never gave them away. They sold them.
Okay.
And not much of a discount either.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Because the public school systems were crammed with Apple IIs in the late 70s, and I think that helped, because the kids were thinking, well, hey Mom, if I'm going to be doing my schoolwork and I'm going to buy a computer, it's got to be Apple so I can bring it back to school. And that's probably how they got some additional sales that way, for compatibility reasons.
Tandy did pretty good selling the Model 3s to the schools, because it was an all-in-one unit.
Yeah. Yeah, Apple did some bold moves, I think, that probably helped get their footprint solid on the ground. Didn't have a lot of Ataris in public schools, at least in South Florida anyways. I don't know if you guys remember Atari computers in the classroom or not.
Well, Ataris were sold as computers, but also as game systems too.
Mm-hmm.
So it was difficult to get the buyer to justify a game computer. Where the kids are supposed to be doing serious work here.
Right. Does anybody remember having Ataris in the classroom? Were you guys at your public schools?
That was all Apples here.
Yeah.
We had Commodore 64s and then Mac Classics later.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember Apple IIs in school. Ironically, when I was in what we now call middle school, back then for me it was junior high. My junior high was all Apple II. And then when I got into high school, they actually switched over to CoCo 2s. And so I got to come back as like an alumnus and show off what the CoCo could do for all the junior high kids. I'm like, all right, kids, let me show you what the CoCo can do now, And so I was all proud of that moment there when they switched over. I remember showing off, there was a game in the Rainbow that was in BASIC, but it had like 4 planes scrolling. You had like 4 different directions of horizontal and vertical scrolling and stuff. And you showed that thing off, that it was like technically a program in BASIC, but I mean, there was some assembly in there. But people were kind of blown away by that. They're like, wow. Michael says he had some C64s in high school. Ken says there were a couple of Apple IIs in the library. Andrew says, I think the 5200 was basically a stripped down version of the Atari computers. Yeah, I think that's right, because a lot of the games looked almost the same. From I just remember like the Atari Pac-Man version of the Atari 800 and Atari 5200 version of Pac-Man looked almost identical to me.
Yeah, back in my high school days, we had mainframe computers.
Real computers.
Yep.
Walked uphill,
punches,
both ways to school.
Walked uphill in the snow both
shoes.
ways, right? Yeah, barefoot in the snow.
Actually, the first computer I used was punch cards.
Wow.
Yeah, if you dropped your stack of punch cards and they weren't in order, you're dead, right?
If you didn't have your numbers printed on the cards, you cried.
Wow.
Yeah, it was all over.
Anyone have MC10s?
They were used to hold the doors open, right? In the outdoor schools.
With the punch cards, your dog actually could eat your homework.
Andrew says, I never saw an Apple outside of the classroom, but then again, I only knew one other person that owned a CoCo. Yeah. I knew one kid that had an Apple II. This is why my, I guess these were my own personal emotional scars, but I've always had pretty much I'm not even sure what the word is, but let's just say I don't even know what the word is. Anyways, I've always had this thing for Apple people because this goes back to like, the late 70s. I knew this guy who had an Apple too, and he was all about, oh man, the Apple is so good. The snooty, elitist, pompous, Apple-y type people. So I've always had this thing for those guys because going back to even those days, like, oh yeah, the Apple is such a great system. It's a superior system, and therefore I am a superior human being, So it's just that whole attitude of Apple is great and I am great and who are you, So
egotistical.
Some things
yes.
never change.
Yeah,
Steve Jobs syndrome.
What's that?
Steve Jobs syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. So I've always had these things for these hardcore Apple people who just think that, they're douchebags, basically. What can I tell you? So I'm sure there are some nice Apple computer owners, but I've always run
reality
into
distortion field.
Tell us about how you really feel about Apple.
Really?
But yeah, those wounds run deep, and they've been going on for a long time. So anytime I hear anybody talk about how great the Apple is, I just want to smack them. Like,
Here come the angry emojis are coming up right away.
Yeah, they can't play any games. I mean, what was the purpose in life with a computer with no games? It's probably why they always were grumpy old people.
Yeah. Apple makes good hardware. I'm not going to take that away from them, but
No. They don't make good hardware. They make expensive hardware.
Apple tax.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
That can also not be upgraded either.
Well, the original Apple the Apple II was very upgradable. It had a bus and expansion slots and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but that's 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Today's Apple, forget
You
it.
can't upgrade.
Yeah.
That's intentional.
Yeah.
Bill would know. Yep.
Mark Overholzer says, "I am crushed." But you're not douchey, Mark. Mark doesn't rub it in our faces.
Ease of use upgrade path, though. It's Apple gave it a lot of thought. Basically, you want to upgrade it, buy a new one.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly it.
And if you don't upgrade it fast enough, we're going to slow down your battery.
I gotta tell you though, I've got some old Macs that can upgrade to the High Sierra OS. So I've got like 10, 12-year-old Macs that are still upgrading the OS. So that's pretty cool that they're still allowing it and it still runs and it's not slowing down the system.
Not my MacBook Pro.
I think I was able to get Sierra even like on a Core 2 Duo, which is like going back to like 2009 based processor. Andrew says, I once met a girl that only dated Apple users. I didn't go on a date with her, obviously. Yeah. But in the old days, that was it. We had those wars, and it's like it was the Apple versus the Commodore versus the Atari, and everybody was beating their chest on which system was best, and back then, if you had a computer in the 80s, you were pretty much a geek because most normal people didn't own computers or use computers. It was very much a nerd stigma on owning a computer then. So basically what you were doing is bragging on how big of a nerd you were. It's like, I am the king of the nerds. I have an Apple,
Nerd! But didn't Apple about ready to go bankrupt and then Microsoft had to bail them out, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep, they did.
Yep.
And the reason why they bailed them out was the fact they wanted to make sure there was another party in the competition. Otherwise, they'd really get hit by the fact that antitrust and all these other things. So it was just like, it was necessity for them to bail them out.
Yeah. Actually, wasn't that when Apple switched to Unix, if I'm not mistaken?
No, they switched because Steve Jobs came back and they took the operating system that he created over at Next and put it on the Mac.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, now I remember.
Yeah.
What's going on, Paul? Paul, was that meant for us, or are you singing to somebody else? We just got a random song there. That's fine.
It is a pretty sweet song. I like it.
The fanboyism. What? How far back do you think fanboyism went? You know, it's like, back in the days of the horse and buggy versus the horseless carriage. You know, the caveman. Yes, no, fire is the best. You got to try this fire thing. My fire is better than yours. Seems like we've always we've always wanted to have something to brag about. You know, you got your college football teams, you got your computers. It's just so it's always a pissing contest.
Well, actually, back then, you know what the major thing was? The whip. Oh, they used to brag about what whip they've got.
The whip. You talking about the
whip? Yeah. What company made your whip and how well you could use it?
Oh wow.
Whipping good.
Yeah.
Whip
could you sit there and whip a fly off of a horse so it stopped bugging it, so it'd go a little faster? Yeah, that was important.
Yeah, well, that was an actual physical skill.
Yep.
You're gonna brag about your computer; it's a completely different animal.
As far as this thing with fanboys go, it's a thing. It's like also movies. You know, like when you go in to see a movie, you want the movie to be good. You're going to root the movie to be good. After all, you didn't want to waste your time and money going to something that was terrible, like Batman versus Superman. But you'd rather go to Avengers. No, but seriously, that's the way too with the computers work. You spend all this money, time, and effort on buying your computer. Know how bad it is. You want to plant your flag saying this is the best because I'm not an idiot. But that was the problem. All these Apple guys were idiots. Okay, let's see the hate come up now. That's gotta creep up.
How many angries we gonna get now? So
we're only at one. I expected 3 more for that one.
Oh, the angries just went away. So
there goes a happy. And there's another happy.
When you watch it live, you can see them like little bubbles pop up on the screen and float by and stuff. It's pretty funny. I wish I could see that on the.
Yep. We lost an angry, and now we got a love.
There's a lot of love. There's a lot of love for Apple hate in here tonight. So that's awesome. Yeah. So I think talking not about the CoCo, I think we could pretty much talk about anything and just sit here and talk about crap. I guess it's not a bad thing, right?
Okay. Now it's called #AfterDark. It's any old crap we want to talk about.
Exactly. Nick, how goes it, Nick?
Oh, nothing new.
Well, you've also got an Amiga, right? So you are an Amiga person.
Yeah, right next to me.
Yeah. What can you tell us about that system? Because I don't know too much about it.
I've always been an Amiga fan ever since it first came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Traitor.
Have you done any? Have you ever developed for it?
No, I've never actually developed, but I've used it as a development tool for the graphics and stuff, mainly on the Amiga, on the CoCo games.
Yeah.
I just like the system. I think it's great.
Because I know John Strong was saying he was going to consider maybe doing something for the Genesis. What is the leap like going from the 6809 to a 68,000? Is it a very shallow, narrow curve, or as far as learning how to talk to that chip?
I don't know. I haven't tried it. I assume, obviously, the 68,000 is a more powerful processor again. But yeah, I've never actually done the assembly on it.
Well, you got to remember the 68,000 works in 8, 16, and 32-bit modes. That's one of the harder things to keep track of. For the data.
Ooh.
And is that software selectable?
Instruction is selectable.
Okay. So why would you want it to talk in 8-bit mode? Like if you were talking to perhaps an 8-bit bus, you're just not wasting cycles or anything? Or
Well, yeah. The thing is, what you're doing is you got a data array, and you can have an 8-bit byte in there, and that's. Well, you're not really speeding up a lot of things. You're making memory more efficient.
Okay.
So you're grabbing just the 8. And then what it'll do is extend the information out. So it'll convert it automatically from a 8-bit sign number into a 32-bit sign number for you if you're doing something like indexing. It's very easy. The thing about Motorola processors, unlike everybody else out there, is they don't have a lot of rules that break the rules. In other words, if you learn a rule of how to use something, it works across all the registers, all the way that does data. The Intel processors, it's kind of like, well, yeah, you can use this instruction to do the work, but you can't use it with this set of registers because it was only designed to use these two and not those two. So it was always exceptions to the rule the way English is.
Okay. It's hard
Very
to believe,
illogical.
Yeah, it's hard to believe there was a time when Intel kind of ruled the world. I mean, they were making the processors that people wanted to use, and they just kind of got out of it.
Yes and no. They were kind of like the first. They had the 404, then the 8008, and then finally with the 8080, that processor became powerful enough that it could truly be a personal computer. But the thing is, then you had Zilog came out with the Z80, which had the 8080 instruction set plus their extensions, which were really nice, and everybody jumped on that bandwagon.
Yeah. Did I say Intel? I meant to say Motorola. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah. Motorola. Yeah. I don't know what happened. I really think probably what happened with Motorola is they became too much in love with the cell phone. And they forgot about their other industries.
Yeah.
Because Motorola and PC, IBM, that is, worked together on the PC chip, and it was doing well, the Power PC.
Yeah.
But they just couldn't make the next leap.
Yeah. Andrew's asking, did Apple have a 16-bit computer? That would be the original Mac, right? The original Mac was 68,000?
Well, actually, that would be technically a 32-bit computer. Because the instruction set inside the 68,000 is 32-bit.
Interesting. So what about the Apple II GS that had a better version of the 6502? Was that 16-bit?
I wouldn't say better, but it was 16-bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I jumped off a little bit, but hear you guys talk about me. Jump back on a moment.
Yeah, we're always talking about you, John Strong.
Yeah, okay. I've done 68,000 code. All the stuff I did for the MM1 was 68,000 base code.
Neat.
Stuff. So I'm familiar with that. I just kind of needed to jump off to get some of this work done on CoCo projects.
Right.
And so a little hard to.
So
if I'm listening, I want to do that instead of work on the project.
Did you find the transition from 6809 to 68,000 to be a huge leap, or was like a natural progression for you, or?
As Steve mentioned, using the different size memory is a little getting used to because they're destinated like a .B, a .W, and things. A little bit different than what you expect in on a 6809. But I liked it. Okay. A lot more registers to work with. Again, another nice processor from Motorola.
Yeah.
And we did have at one of the CoCo Fest a guy from Motorola that was talking, and it said they simply didn't have the money to spend to keep up with Intel on things.
Who is like dragging noise across their microphone right now?
It looks like Mark.
Actually, it looks like our engineer.
Or Grant.
Okay.
Yeah, and what's going on with the other CoCoTALK channel that keeps calling me?
I'm missing that one.
Yeah,
I think Ron's trying to call the wrong thing.
Yeah. Looks like the live chat's not updating on my live broadcasting software now, so I've missed a few comments that I'm seeing on the Facebook page. But Mark Overhoser was saying that the Apple II GS had a 65816 processor, but he says that is still poor compared to the 6809.
Agreed.
You had to switch modes back and forth quite a bit. Yes, you had 16 bits you could act there, but you had time. You had to switch modes to do this and back and forth.
I think the graphics bus only ran at 1 megahertz. like an Apple II. Didn't take advantage of the higher speed.
Yeah, I'm not. I looked into it a little bit because I considered doing something on the GS, but that's about as far as it got. So, not the expert.
Okay.
Just know a little bit, enough to be dangerous on it.
Well, the graphic bus, for the original graphic set was an 8-bit for backwards compatible.
Well, I mean, we're always talking about how Tandy took shortcuts. Apple, with the Apple IIgs, took a shortcut. Well, not a shortcut, but the 2GS was supposed to be capable of running 8 megahertz. They purposely slowed it down so it wouldn't compete against their Macs.
Oh, yeah. Well, all right, who's bringing in the feedback? Hey, Ron DeVoe.
Hello.
Well, hopefully you're not giving us feedback right now. You still there, Ronnie?
Hang on, I'm gonna put me on.
You're coming a little overdriven, but yeah, you're sounding okay right now. It's a little bit loud.
I got no background though.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, we're not getting any updates now on the live chat on my main screen I'm looking at. But Mark said that the Apple II GS only ran at 2.3 megahertz unless you set it to 1 megahertz for compatibility. Okay. I don't know why I'm not getting a chat update on my thing. Okay, now Jason just said update. I'm not getting. Maybe it's just Mark. I'm not seeing Mark Overholzer in the chat. I'm not sure, but all of his stuff is not coming through.
Well, I've got to drop off, guys.
Okay, Tom C. just showed up too. Says my messages do not appear on the main screen either. I am not sure why. There are some people who are not showing up on the chat. All right, hey Nick, thanks for joining us.
All right then, see you, Zos.
All right.
All right.
Take care, Nick.
See you, Nick.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm gonna try to reconnect. What's going on, Ron Delvo?
Oh well, I was relaxing doing the family thing, and then I came in here and I thought, no, they're still on.
We're still on, Ron.
How many
After
hours
Dark
has it
is
been?
still on.
Yeah.
How many hours are you into this thing?
Oh, I have
2.
no idea. I lost track.
Dang.
I'm trying to fix the live chat right now.
Are you
If I
recording
can.
this one?
No.
Oh,
Am I? Yeah, actually I am. I am doing a local recording. I forgot about that. Yep. For posterity's sake, for posterior's sake, yes, we are doing that. All right.
Were you able to recover
For
the...
another EMP or no?
Yeah, in case, just in case. I mean, in case an EMP comes by. All right. So yeah, some people are not showing up, and I don't know why. Yeah, must be a Facebook thing. We did get somebody to drop a BS bomb on us though. Luke just did. So all right, Luke. So yeah, I don't know. There's a disconnect from what's going on Facebook Live and what's showing up in my stream, but whatever. That's technology for you. We'll deal with it. Mm-hmm. So Ron, we've been trying to talk about everything but the color computer as far as other retro systems that we like, and you've got a lot in your collection. Almost all of them made by Tandy.
Yeah, I have two those. Gosh, I can't even think of what they're called. They're the membrane covered small computers.
Timex Sinclairs?
Yes, Sinclairs. Yes, I have two of those. I think I have memory packs for them, and I have 2 or 3 cassettes. That's it. And it's probably I also have 2 Atari 2600s and a box full of games that my son left here.
Wow.
Haven't hooked it up and played it yet. I did clean them up. They were really dirty from sitting in the garages for years and years and years. Yeah, that's one there. Yeah.
Ah, there you go. Atari Donkey Kong.
Have one laying around.
Yep. That came in a couple of different labels. I've got the white cartridge with the black label. I've got the black cartridge with the red label. A couple different versions of the old Donkey Kong for the 2600.
Hang on, I'll grab my box full.
Ron's going to grab his box.
Hang on.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a number of chat messages that I missed because they weren't showing up on the main screen I'm looking at. So Mark was saying, Mark Overholz has said, I figured out how to post as me into 6808 rocks. And then he says, I have all my CoCos under lock and key, and I've got a dragon too. Yeah, Jason said, update. There's some more. Tom C saying, my messages don't appear on the main screen. Says some work and some don't. CoCoTALK says, I am sexy. And Luke says, Apple has hacked. And then Mark says, I have 8 TS1000s, which is not showing up in the sidebar here. What is a TS1000, Mark? We got 2 Atari systems here. Wow. Is that what they call the Sixer because it's got the 6 sliders on it?
Yep.
I got one of each.
Yeah.
I think this is a light sixer. I don't think it's the old heavy sixer.
And the distinction was how much it actually weighed? The heavy
Pretty
sixer
much.
weighed more?
And there was some differences in the molding around this corner, if I remember right.
Okay.
How the simulated wood grain was or something
Okay.
weird. But yes, this was lighter.
Yeah,
Oh.
Pac-Man. I have 2 different versions of the Pac-Man, too. I've got the Atari Pac-Man and the Sears Pac-Man. So,
Unfortunately, they're identical as far as gameplay.
oh, yeah. They both suck equally as well. But
This one has a 49-cent price tag
Yeah.
on it. I think I overpaid.
When you're looking for variants, though, I've got a few variants of some Atari 8-bit cartridges. Yeah.
Back in the day when Atari Pac-Man, we called it Flicker Vision.
Flicker Vision. Telegames. Sears Telegames, huh? Hyperspace and thrust control. Woohoo! Asteroids, huh? Combat. Yes. That's awesome. Yeah, I could... Andrew was asking if that was a heavy sixer, but we think it's not, right? You think it's a light sixer?
I'm pretty sure this is the light sixer, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't have an actual Atari 2600 system, but I've got this Atari 7800, and I've got the ColecoVision with the Atari adapter. What cartridge is that?
Yeah.
Looks like an iMagic one there, Ron.
That's an M Network.
Or M Network, Mattel Network?
It says
baseball. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's the best Atari baseball game right there. Is the M Network baseball?
Yeah.
This 2600 says it's made in Taiwan, so I'm pretty sure that makes it a light sixer right there.
Okay.
Hang on.
And this is just one I have laying around. This is not even like the bulk of the collection. This is just one that's been laying here.
Nice. Your brother Ken says Mixed Pac-Man proved that it could be done right. And Michael...
Absolutely, and there's an Atari. Here's an interesting thing, since we're talking about Pac-Man, is Atari Age actually sells a homebrew Pac-Man that was still within the 4K memory that actually plays really well.
Yeah, I was just looking at that video today. Yeah, that was on Facebook.
Pac-Man
Showed up today.
4K. Yeah, it's been out for a while. That's the same company that sells that Chris Spry, the Zippy the Porcupine, the Sonic the Hedgehog clone.
Yeah, Spry guy. Yeah. So is that a heavy sixer?
Remember, these guys were under tremendous deadlines to get these games done. And what was it? Less than 6 weeks for E.T.
That was the best game they came out with.
Yeah.
And that game there, what you played, the author said this was the prototype. It was not the completed game. He told them that, and they said, we're going to ship it anyways.
6 weeks?
Okay, so
6 weeks.
That's the 4 slider.
Okay,
so that's
Steve,
not the sixer.
Is that the Darth Vader?
How does 6 weeks produce that and 30 days produce Rampage?
Well, let's just say I had a better system, and I kind of knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 weeks is not an excuse.
But seriously, it is a lot of work to program a 2600 because remember before when I was talking about you build each scan line as it comes down? Well, that's what the video processor does. No, you as the programmer have to fill up that single video line within exactly
Atari to do anything was like a Sockmaster demo.
And then some. I did know a programmer for the Atari 2600 that did literally go crazy. He's the guy I talked about at Datasoft that had to work in an office with the doors open because fireballs were chasing him.
It's insane. Tom C says check out Atari Age Scramble for the 2600 too. Yeah. Everybody's holding up their joysticks now. This is the show us who's got the bigger stick part of CoCoTALK After Dark. So.
Yes, it is.
Oh! Well, Ron's has got more buttons than yours, Jason.
Oh, I got one of those somewhere. I just don't think it's within arm's reach right now.
Yeah,
The
but
question is
Jason's
on that.
got more girth.
Yeah, but the question is on that controller with the 9 buttons, how many of them actually work?
Cannot answer that question.
Don't know.
Can neither confirm nor deny that. Yeah, the Wyco controllers are nice. I've got one of those.
This is just a standard one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
God,
An
those
oldie
things
but
suck.
goodie. Oldie but goodie.
Well, it's like what you were saying earlier there, Steve. The Atari 5200 had the worst controllers.
Oh yeah.
What is this?
That looks like not necessarily a Wyco, but
200 sucked.
yeah, Atari 5200.
Oh yeah, the best thing you can do with an Atari 5200 there was a way to make a Y cable and hook in a 15-pin PC game port joystick.
There's a
Right.
Y cable.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Why?
Y cable is one less cable than an X cable.
It's got one fewer
Oh.
chromosome. We are just breaking out the archives. Look at this thing here. Ooh, deluxe video game controller.
This is a weird one here. I don't even remember where I got this. I don't even remember if I've ever even hooked it up. But it's,
Are those all knobs?
I guess it's all buttons, and I guess this was optimized for. It has 2 modes. It has normal and Astro Blast. So I just dug this out of storage a few weeks ago, and I've been meaning to do something with it, but I haven't tried it out. But it's for the 2600. But you can clearly see there's an Astro Blast and a normal mode over here. Over here. There we go. Over here.
What the hell was Astro Blast? I don't even remember that game. So-
I had a game called Astro Blast.
I usually have Astro Blast after eating Mexican food.
It was a game made by M Network. It was there was asteroids coming. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Astro Blast was that Intellivision game they ported over.
Okay.
So they made a
Right.
custom controller just for that.
Well, actually, I don't think this is made by. This was made by Starplex Electronics of Liberty Lake, Washington, according to the back of the box here. Now, Astro Blast was an M Network game, which Mattel. So it was one of those weird M Network game cartridges, just like Ron was showing with the baseball. And now the weird thing about this game is that game is it could be played with a joystick or a paddle controller, and it was much easier to play with a paddle controller because you're going back and forth. These asteroids or meteors or meteorites or whatever the heck they would be at this point were raining down on you, and you're moving back and forth shooting them. But it's the only game I know of that you could play with a paddle or a joystick.
That's interesting.
And I have yet to try this. This is on my list of things to try once I get a good video mod done on one of my Ataris, so I can.
Okay.
I want to play with this.
Remember, when the smoke comes out, that's bad.
Right.
Yes, you cannot let the magic smoke out of the chips. It's always bad.
Mark Overholzer says, I've got 3 Wycos just like Jason's and 2 that are black and white. Yeah, so Mark's not showing up on my screen.
They're black and white and red all over.
Yeah, and Ken, your brother, says that game is kind of a cross between Asteroids and Galaga.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, Michael Newman says I got to head out. Thanks, Mike, for being here. Getting past
And yes,
our bedtime.
I still have the Atari 2600 Junior. Yes, I still have it.
No, that was a neat little machine.
That was the original Atari that we had at home when we were kids, because it was when you could get them. They was like under $50, and a bunch of the games were like $1 at that point.
Wow.
$1 or $3. Yeah, so that's
After
when
the
that's
crash.
when we got an Atari. Before then, we just had the CoCo and a Coleco Telstar Pong machine.
Yeah, I remember something like that. We got a Coleco Vision, and we had maybe 2 or 3 games when it came out, and maybe a year or so later, when the whole market crashed, we got the Atari adapter cheap. And then we got a couple of bin Atari games for probably $1 a piece, so we got a few Atari games at that time too, to plug into the Coleco Vision.
Of course, they say the Atari 2600 ET, and a couple other games really killed the market. What killed the market was all the companies that are coming out and selling schlockware. I mean, there was even a video game from Purina Dog Chow.
Jeez.
Chase the
Chase
Chuck
the Chuck Wagon. Of course there was.
Yep. And it's like you had everybody and anybody developing games for the system, and they were just crap. And that's the thing. And the parents, if it had a tie-in to a movie, man, they bought that game. Kid got it, and then the parents never bought anything for that system because it was a terrible game. It was just, there was no control over quality of the games. Now, usually an Activision title, you knew was going to be quality, and the kids would usually ask for something from Activision.
Right,
The
I like
parents
that
didn't
plug
know.
and play.
Yeah.
Those little plug and play systems are pretty neat. Yeah, Activision was good. Activision always stood for quality. Activision and iMagic were a couple of ones that you could count on. Ironically, too, like Mattel and Parker Brothers made pretty good stuff. So if one of those guys made it, it was usually pretty good. Parker Brothers seemed to get good licensing. So I think Parker Brothers is who brought a few games to the ColecoVision, like Frogger or Popeye. It was just really weird how the licensing worked back then.
Yeah, when I was back at Datasoft, that was our biggest competition and we're trying to get in front of it because Parker Brothers was buying up everything left and right.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we were talking to Sega about Frogger, and they said, well, you should have been in a week ago because Parker Brothers rolled up with their Brinks truck and bought it for all these systems.
Wow. Yeah. Kaboom! Great game. Did Kaboom? What is that the manual there, Jason?
It is, yes.
What was Kaboom recommended to play with? Did it play with the paddle? Because I don't remember if it was a paddle or a joystick.
I believe it was paddles only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I mostly played on emulators, and I find that it's not as responsive as I recall it being back in the day.
Yeah,
What year was
this is my
Kaboom?
brother's wife's favorite game.
What was that, Alan?
Yeah, what year was Kaboom? Was there an arcade game like that? Because that's kind of like our Popcorn was on the color computer, and there was a bunch of games like that for
Kaboom
other
was
systems.
by Activision. It was their first hot title, and it's the one that they who's sharing their screen.
Who's sharing their screen? Is that you, Ron?
Yeah, I took the moon tonight with my
Oh, wow.
telescope.
That's nice.
Cool, huh?
Yeah.
Just to change the subject, it's not a game.
Yeah. So not only did we show off our
Oh my God,
joysticks, we're now showing off our moons here on CoCoTALK.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Ron, hey Ron, the next time you want to moon us, warn us.
Nothing like a little pressed ham. So
I lost it. Oh, there it is. Stop sharing. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
The copyright on the Kaboom manual is 1981.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like one of the first games for Activision, and I believe it was the game that Atari was suing over.
Well, was Popcorn supposed to be like a Kaboom, or was it based on something else?
Avalanche.
Avalanche.
Was that the arcade game that inspired these?
Yeah, Avalanche
Yes.
was a game in Atari release, similar to, it's almost like a reverse version of Breakout, where instead of trying to break the bricks, you have to catch the bricks. Similar concept that you move the stack of paddles side to side to catch falling objects. Yeah, Curtis and I did a review of all the games that were kind of inspired by Avalanche. Yeah, it was neat because I wasn't familiar with the game at the time. Brian Joyce is asking, are you on the lookout for Planet 9?
Yeah. No, it's Planet 10.
Planet
Or is it
10, I don't know.
Nibiru or something like that.
Plan 9 from outer space, is that what you're talking about?
What are you holding up there, Jason?
Well, this is for that plug and play. This plug and play actually has a couple little cartridges that add
Oh.
more games. Like this one adds Dig Dug and Rally X.
Extra
So I
interesting.
think I guess they actually call it a game key.
Neat.
It came with them. There's another one. It's around here somewhere that I think has like Miss Pac-Man and maybe another game on it. But
Never seen that before. An upgradable
Yeah,
plug and
it's-
play.
yeah, it came with it, and I have the battery eliminator pack on here, but it just slides right into the front of it there, and
Right. And those were basically just emulated versions of the arcade game, right?
yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got one. I think I've got a Miss Pac-Man plug and play I picked up at a garage sale. I got a non-working version of the CoCo battery-operated Frogger game. Speaking of Frogger, I'll grab that real quick. I got that for like $2. It doesn't work, but it can't be that hard to fix.
Infamous last words.
You can put a Raspberry Pi in it and make it emulated.
Well, maybe a Raspberry Pi Zero.
I still have this.
SpongeBob, right? Right. So I've actually got, this is my original. This I kept from my childhood, but this is my original CoCo Pac-Man. This one also doesn't work because of like battery corrosion in the compartment, but I've still got it. This was a neat one. I don't remember what this cost when it was new, but that's my original. And then this is one I got at a garage sale recently. This is the Frogger version. This one also doesn't work, but it's in pretty good shape other than a few labels starting to peel up, but decent shape. I think I paid $2 for this.
There's new ones of those being made now. I saw them in Bed Bath & Beyond this Christmas.
Oh, of these style here? Because they've got the tiny arcade ones that look like actual upright cabinets, and there's a whole series of the tiny arcade ones that are actual emulated
that's
games.
what I saw. I know they had Frogger and a couple of other games, and they look like the same type of liquid LED type displays instead of a video screen.
Yeah. So yeah, tiny arcades getting to be pretty popular, but it's like, I don't know. When I start looking at that kind of crap, it's like I got so little room, so little money, and how much crap does one need at some point in time, you know? So it's like
that's the question.
Yeah. There's new generations of crap being made. I'm still trying to play catch up on my old generations of crap I want to collect, you know? So cool stuff, though. You guys got some really cool stuff.
And yes, Ken, that is a Jack's Pacific cartridge.
Ah. Why does Ken not own Skype? It's free, Ken. You can...
I don't know. Is that out of his? Maybe that's out of his price range.
Yes. Skype.com. Oh, Ken says I have a tiny Galaxian. Well, you know...
My Galaxian's bigger.
Yeah, that's because they make pills. So, cool. What is Brian saying? I hope to find it, Ron. We need a planet called Delvo.
Yeah, well, there is an asteroid called Delvo, which I found. It's a real one.
Yeah. There's a Facebook group called Old Made New where they do a lot of work on this CoCo stuff, and they refurbish them. A lot of times they'll replace them with Raspberry Pi systems and emulation. Alec, there's Ron sitting in the Enterprise chair.
Yeah, I took over for Captain Kirk for a short time.
That was good. How'd that go?
He has a great.
That must have been season 4.
Season 4. How many green alien broads did you bang that night?
No bangers. Married 44 years. I would be lynched. So we don't do that.
You got to pass if it's an intergalactic opportunity. You got to get a pass on that.
Well, I tried to get my wife to wear one of those X-shaped gowns, like
Oh yeah, the Star Trek babe outfit. Yeah,
she won't go for it.
Yeah, that was my biggest disappointment on the Next Generation. Was the lack of skimpy outfits. I was so.
Well, they had them on occasion.
Yeah, not very often.
No, not very often.
Not often enough.
Well, during the first season, they had guys wearing dresses.
Yeah, on the first episode, that was weird. That was really weird. That's the first. Like Counselor Troy started off in a skirt, and they had an extra walk by in a skirt too, on episode 1.
Intergalactic cheerleader outfit.
Yeah.
Among my collections, I have a whole series of VHS second generation Star Trek, and I have the first generation Star Trek in
Yeah.
VHS in the garage.
Wow. Those might be worth some money now.
Maybe.
No, VHS has no resale value.
I heard that the Disney Diamond Collection and a lot of their animated classics are on the clamshell case. Some of those things are going for a pretty penny.
There's a few of them because they haven't been edited out. Like the one for the Rescuers, there's a scene when the bird's flying down. It's going by all these apartment windows. In one of the windows, there's a woman looking out from the shower, and she's nude in the chest.
Oh. Russell Flowers is putting a very skimpy costume YouTube link. I guess we'll have to watch that one later. Or is that very skimpy costumes? Yes, this might become completely After Dark at that point. Yes. Skimpy costumes make for good sci-fi. All right. Well, what else have we not? What topic have we not touched, and how long do we want to keep this train on the rails? I don't think we're any. I don't think we have like really derailed it, but I think all good things must come their course at some point in time. We good for a little while? You guys running out of interest here, or what's the general consensus?
It's not a CoCo project, but it could be.
What are you showing us there, Ron? Is that Uranus?
Yeah, I took a picture of Saturn. And,
not that kind of podcast.
Jupiter.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to see.
I'll pass something along that will chew up a few months of your life if you decide to go down this rabbit hole. There's a blog called All in Color for a Quarter. And the guy that writes it, he collected all this information and did all this research on the golden age of video games, 1971 to 1984. And it started in 2012. His last posting was in 2016. He kind of decided, well, I'm never going to write the book, so I'm just going to dump the information out on the internet. And if you start with the very first posting and just start reading through it, it has so many stories and interviews and the histories of how Nintendo came to be and how Space War and Pong happened and backgrounds on all these pinball companies that tried to make these video games. And it is an absolutely amazing read, including, like the people that turned down the Beatles. There were some video games that debuted the same year. There were 4 of them being shown off at some show. And there was one that was a tank game. And so some big arcade company chose that to distribute because they knew tanks were a hit. And some other company got stuck with some game that they didn't really want, but they figured it would be okay. And it was a little pie-shaped character running around eating dots. So the Legend of Tank Battalion, one of the most awful games I have ever played, it was released the same time as Pac-Man, and a company chose it over Pac-Man thinking it was going to be the hit.
Oh, wow. Talk about your epic fails right there, huh?
Yeah, it's got all kinds of stuff from the magazines, the trade magazines of the day, showing the income from the different vending machines, and there was no category for this, so the magazines that covered like cigarette machines and jukeboxes were covering the early coin-operated game machines. So it's a very fun look at what was going on back then.
That is interesting. You glean some of those things when you listen to. Yeah, put that in there. You kind of glean some of that when you hear some of these game developer conversations. I remember listening to the guy who developed the Gauntlet game, talking about how the Atari only made its sale one time when it sold the cabinet to a reseller, and the resellers were making more money, or the stores were making the money on the quarters. So this is the Skimpy Costumes website here. There you go.
From Star Trek.
This is how you should dress an alien babe.
Now the second one with the X is the one my dad really liked.
Yeah, he's got good taste.
Well, the first season or 2, they spent a lot of time covering the belly buttons because they had to get by the censors.
Standards and practices, huh?
No, the third one there, that's from the bad third season.
Okay. So belly button was considered obscene at one point in time, huh?
Yeah, wouldn't get by the NBC censors.
Wow.
Well, watch the first season of. Yeah, I Dream of Jeannie. They made sure that her outfit covered her navel.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. I like hearing all these little behind the scenes stories about stuff. To me, sometimes that's more interesting than the actual things that we already know. Ken says, "Where's the green chicks?"
Well, like in Star Trek, they supposedly had the first interracial kiss.
Yeah,
they cheated. They didn't show the kiss on TV. He was about to kiss her, and the way Kirk moved, William Shatner moved, took her out of the shot, so they didn't actually show the kiss. They implied it.
Ah.
That all the red shirts die.
All the red shirts die. Yeah, that's a known.
No, Sky never died.
Yeah. Well, if they go on an away team sometimes.
Yeah.
Then they
No,
were
Sky
unknown.
would go on the away team, not die.
Yeah, but if they were unknown.
Yeah. The extras. Yeah.
Mr. Roberts or somebody.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Skippy.
Yeah.
Lieutenant gonna die.
Here, hold my phaser.
Now, there was a science officer that went away on the away mission, and he died.
Yeah.
He was a geologist.
You want to talk about, you mentioned something about that. What was this about the Beatles? So was there an opportunity to do a Beatles game and somebody passed on that, Alan?
No, it was the nobody wanted to sign the Beatles, and then they went on to become this huge
I see
band.
what
And it
you're saying.
turns out
Yeah.
the video game industry is littered with all kinds of things like that, where things that went on to be big hits were turned down.
Yeah. You want to talk about one of the strangest pairings of games was the freaking Michael Jackson games on Sega, the Moonwalker and the arcade, and the Moonwalker on the Sega Genesis. Such a strange. Here's Kirk and Uhura. Yes, romance. What is this? We're zooming in on the kiss. What is this? What porn site is this, Ron?
It's not. It's just all you have to do is Google anything.
Yeah. There's the.
They have things where they're cheek to cheek and a bunch of other stuff, but during the actual kiss, they turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had we had Nichelle. Basically, we had Scotty, Chekhov, and Uhura at the 25th anniversary of Trek Fest in Riverside, Iowa, the little town that decided they would be the place where Kirk will be born.
Okay.
They wrote in and said, "Can we do this?" And Roddenberry went, "Okay, yeah, it can be Riverside." And they were. She actually told that story about how they knew it was going to be cut, and she said that Shatner made goofy faces to the camera. So they couldn't use the scene, and that's why the scene we got to see as much of it as we did is because he ruined the shot. They thought they had it, and when they went to edit it, they couldn't use the other side that they wanted.
What is this here, Ron? That awkward moment. What does it say?
After your first kiss.
I just saw a video today. It was the Nerdist, and they did Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek.
Oh, is he's
that's
supposedly going to direct one? I guess, huh?
That's going to be.
No, this was just someone took a bunch of old Star Trek clips and mashed them up and everything to make it look like a trailer for a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Well, I read somewhere that he supposedly wants to direct a new Star Trek feature. There he is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Question is it a feature from CBS or Paramount? They both jointly own different aspects of Star Trek.
Yeah, that part I am not sure about.
The company was so much better when it was all Viacom.
Yeah. Good deal. Yeah, that Michael Jackson game was funny because when you think back now on all the allegations of the alleged child inappropriateness with Michael Jackson, but one of the cornerstones of the game was him rescuing kids that were locked in closets. He had unlock a closet and let the kid out, and every single one of them was the same little white girl with pigtails, and it's just like, Michael! Every time you open up a door, she'd be like, Michael! And she'd run away and stuff, and it's just, you look back now and you say, how odd is this that, it's a game with a guy rescuing kids that are locked in a closet, And then to defeat the level, he had to do a dance move where he did his whole dance move, and the whole screen, everybody danced together, and then they exploded because he danced their asses to death, you know. So it was just an odd friggin' game when you think, what is this here, Kirk and Spock? What is this crap?
There's a lot of fan fiction about Kirk and Spot on the internet, apparently.
Yeah,
Evidently.
not my cup of tea.
First
So-
time I ever saw it. God.
Well, even in Next Generation, they had fan fiction, and one of them was so good they actually made it into one of the episodes. It's called The Lower Decks from the 7th season. That was fan inspired. It's the one where they're following the life of some lieutenants and ensigns.
Okay.
And the one gal ends up dying on her mission to help what was that race? Cardassians. To help a double agent Cardassian. She ends up dying and like that. And it's actually a very well done episode, but it followed people other than Picard and Riker and like that.
Interesting. This day in TV history, 1968, Star Trek and Uhura share the first interracial kiss, huh? I mean, it looks pretty legit right there.
That's TV
Yeah, well,
Guide.
that's a still shot.
Yeah.
That's TV Guide.
TV Guide, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because what they would do is to promote the stuff, they would have somebody on set taking pictures with Hasselblancs so they could be on covers of magazines.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to watch the Next Generation now on Netflix because I missed most of it when it was on the air. I caught it towards the tail end, so I'm catching all
listen.
kinds of little subtle things.
Something they did, which is really cool, is with the Star Trek: The First Generation, they've changed all the graphics in the series. If you're watching it on Netflix, they changed all the Earths to a modern-looking Earth, and animation with the ship is all new, redone.
Well, the reason why they did that is when they're doing Next Generation, they shot everything on film, transferred to the video. Then on video, they did the special effects. Well, now with the high def, those videos don't look very good because it wasn't even recorded in standard def and like that. It was video. So, yeah, they had to go back and redo it. And of course, watching the original Star Trek episodes, all the special effects have been replaced with modern special effects, but they still try to make them look cheesy.
Yeah, the period appropriate, huh? So is
You got it.
Is the Kardashians, is that the same one that we're watching now on reality television? That same species?
Yeah, I guess so. Of course, they're the original ones, and trust me, they would not be filmed for glamour stuff and like that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
They look kind of reptilian.
Yeah, I think the episode I'm up to now on TNG is where they're encountering the Ferengi for the first time.
That's towards the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, they play a much bigger part in Deep Space Nine and everything else, too. So
I recommend jump to season 7 and look for the episode called Lower Decks.
Lower Decks.
Really good
Okay.
episode.
Okay. I will look for that. Cool. We are coming up.
Yeah, it's on most top 10 lists.
Okay, well, we're coming up on the 3-hour mark here. We're about 15 minutes away from midnight in a 3-hour episode. How are we doing, guys? You guys
3-hour tour.
Yes.
Has anybody said anything about this being too long yet?
Well, it's kind of us, really. I think we're...
Yeah, just us. We're the only ones.
I think we are our own audience at this point, so... I'm just checking in with you guys. Yeah. We got, I'm not sure how many people are watching us live right now. How can you tell?
Both of them.
My flyby goes, it says viewers 9. Are there 9 viewers right now still?
9!
9 when you speak in German?
I'd kind of like to do this some night where it'd be just kind of like a developer hacker session where people that are working on projects all join in a conference and we just kind of talk about what we're doing and ask questions back and forth. There's kind of an interesting vibe here, and it's amazing to see so many people that actually have like color computers within an arm's reach from them. So
yeah,
that might be another thing we could do. What do they call those things at TED Talks that they do like this? They do them out in the lobbies or whatever.
I'm not sure.
It's a different type of. There's a name for that type of thing where people get together and have their little conferences, but they don't do it in a room. They do it like in the halls and in the breakout, like lobbies and stuff. There's a name for that. That's what this reminds me of.
Okay.
The Beatles. Why don't we do it in the road?
Oh, look at Jason with his topless CoCo. We have got a topless
It's
CoCo
definitely
now.
within arm's reach. I checked. I can reach out with my arm, and there it is.
And there she blows. Yes.
This is Ron's garage.
Oh, that's a picture of Ron's garage. That's beautiful with the cactuses
Well,
and stuff.
It's my observatory area.
Neat.
But my CoCos are in there.
Neat. You need to give us a full tour one time. Just walk around with a camera, show
Yeah.
us the whole thing.
It's pretty cool.
Now, do you have to pull out your scopes, or do you have a part of the roof that retracts?
No, I don't have any of that. I just have the building there. It's 12 by 12 filled in. It used to be just 4 columns, but it had the roof on it and a fan underneath and a light. So I just filled in the walls and put the door in myself. And then I have a golf green right across from it. And I got 3 scopes set up on it, and I cover them at night.
No, I'll tell you an interesting story. Talk about telescopes. I don't know if the name Alan Rand rings a bell with you, but this is a guy I know down here in South Florida now. He came up with the idea of the mobile observatory because you needed to get the lens in a place where they were less affected by atmospheric conditions. Like just the so most of the bigger observatories are in cold areas and they're up higher on a mountain and things like that because you want less heat waves and things like that. So yeah, he came up with the whole idea of the mobile observatory. As a matter of fact, because he was an astronomer and into lens development and stuff like that, what he was doing to help intensify looking at stars in outer space became the catalyst for night vision. Because one of the things he noticed is that every time you magnified something, that the picture got twice as big, but the intensity got cut in half as far as how bright it was. So he was trying to come up with this kind of luminous compensation so you could zoom out further and see things. And that whole system became the first generation night vision, which was originally developed for astronomical purposes, but became a kind of military asset. So I thought those kind of stories are really interesting.
The green-looking tubes.
Yeah. So this guy's big into astronomy and lenses and optics and things like that. Really fascinating guy. What is Brian saying? How they discovered the rings around Uranus? It's a mobile observatory on a plane. Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes your telescopes are definitely that's which is basically why they put the Hubble in outer space. So there is no atmosphere between it and the lenses. So the Delvaux Observatory.
I live in the in a dark sky neighborhood. It's been credited as not having street lights and all.
Okay.
It's nice and dark here.
Yeah, that helps too. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool stuff.
Here, I got a picture from a drone.
Is that your house?
Yeah, that's my golf green in the building.
Oh, wow. Nice little setup you got there, Ron.
Yeah. And I got a pool, and it's real nice. I got a third of an acre.
You going to invite us over for a barbecue sometime?
You're welcome. Come. Usually have steak on Saturday.
Road trip.
We have Coco Fest out here.
Ken says that Ken says maybe I'll call him sometime, then you'll wish that I hadn't. So is Ken a bigger character than you, Jason?
Oh, that's gonna be up for someone else's debate. I have no idea.
We're gonna have to compare and contrast, huh?
If you type in DelvauxObservatory.com, you'll go to my website, which has the pictures of. I also have pictures of the moon. I found an X on the moon, but I can't get anybody to recognize that it exists. It's on there.
I'm trying to type it out. I'm not sure if I can spell either of those words correctly, but I think I
Delvo
did.
Observatory. DELVAUX.
Yep.
Observatory.com.
I found it.
Yep.
Revealing God's Universe.
Yep, that's it.
Delvo Observatory Telescope. Okay, here we go. The official Delvo Observatory video.
Oh.
There's your building.
Just scroll down. There's all kinds of pictures of the universe on there.
Oh, there's the X.
Yep.
Let's see the X that you created. Yeah.
I called Astronomy Magazine. I talked to the guy. We're friends now. But he said, nah, we're not doing any of that stuff. They already have an X and a V that people have seen and they cataloged, but they're not interested in my X that I call them. There's a blood moon.
Nice.
Now, Ron, you do know that the Earth is flat, right?
Yeah, right. What do they say? If the Earth is flat, then cats would already have everything knocked off the edge.
That's good.
I just can't believe people still believe that.
Yeah, well, I think it's more for fame and fortune,
Right.
I believe that pancakes are flat.
Pancakes?
Yeah, pancakes.
Pancakes.
Here, have another drink there.
I'm eating some pancakes.
I stopped a long time ago, but no, pancakes are flat.
Pancakes are flat. If they're good pancakes, yeah.
Better than with some syrup and some whatever else.
A
you like
pat
on
of
there.
butter.
It's good stuff.
A nice pat of butter on that pancake.
Yes. Indeed.
Wow, Jason.
So, Ron is taking a page from the John Linville School of Backlighting. So
yeah, well, I handed out.
You got your podcast ready lighting system going there. So good times. Temporary layoffs. All right. Well, what do you think, guys? Have we beat this one to death?
Oh,
started.
I think it's thoroughly gone.
Yeah. That was kind of fun. We covered a lot of topics, majority of them non-CoCo related, and we managed to keep a small captive audience too in the process, besides ourselves. So, yeah. Thanks everybody who joined us in the live chat, starting with, so we had Jason Reigard and Mark Overholzer and Thomas Chapinski, that's Tom C. Luke came by, Russell Flowers was here, Michael Newman was here, Andrew John Bodner was here, Ken Reigard is here, Tom C. Who else? Brian Joyce is here with us. And I'm not sure who else, but yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for watching us. This has been another riveting episode of CoCoTALK After Dark. Paul Fiscarelli just stopped by saying, yo. All right, hey, Paul. I think John Linville was watching earlier. I did see a bunch of names of people who were watching, but not all of them were chatting. It's kind of hard for me to watch these screens and know what's going on. But yeah, this was fun.
You should write some kind of a little program that would capture all those unique names.
Sure. I'll get right on that.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So, how did we make out?
Write it in basic.
Yeah, how did we make out on our emoji meter here? We're going to close out with 6 likes, 2 loves, 4 ha-has, 1 wow, and we've got no negative emotions right now.
Oh, that's good.
So that's good. Yeah. So, yeah, Brian, thanks for being here. And, yeah, everybody's welcome to join us on Skype if you want. You can voice chat and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to close this out. We're going to play it out right now with some outro music, but let's play some of Alan's little clips, too. David says, thanks for sharing. Thanks, David. Thanks for being here. So we're going to play some of Alan's clips, and then we're going to do the outro video, and we're going to call this one a wrap. And so, yeah, for those who weren't able to make it live, if you're watching this later on, let us know what you think about this. This was very free form, very non-specific, general retro conversations. Maybe we can pick a system or a topic for future episodes and just talk about things that are not CoCo related, but still vintage retro related, all that kind of stuff. All right, guys, we're out of here. And for those who are still in the live chat right now, we have Grant Leety and Jason Reigard, the CoCo Man, and Paul Thayer, and Ron Delvaux, and Steve Bjork, and Alan Huffman, and Bill Noble, who are still with us. And we had a few other people who came and went. So we're going to play us out now, guys. Take care.
CoCo forever.
CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark. CoCoTALK After Dark.
Oh yeah, love that song. And we are off the air.
That
Very
After
nice.
Dark logo sometimes looks like After Bark.
After Bark. Yeah, it kind of does when you think about it.
Where'd
After
the music
Bark.
come from, Steve? Mike Rowe?
No, that's just on the YouTube library. Well, this one here is Alan Huffman. So.
CoCoTALK.
Oh, cool.
CoCoTALK After Dark.
Yeah, so Alan Huffman made those for us, but the other one, that kind of jazzy one, that was from the YouTube public music library.
It's very late night with David Letterman-esque.
Yes, that's what I liked about it.
It's Jello.
Yes, yeah, very, very late night talk show-esque, for sure. Cool. Well, this was fun.
So now we talk 3 hours off the air. Is that what happens now?
Yeah.
That's right. Now it's time for the after show.
It's the
So what we'll
after
do
right here.
is we'll all leave. You can sit here by yourself and talk for another 3 hours.
I got a bed right here.
Hey, your wife didn't put you in a doghouse tonight, did she, Ronnie?
No, because I spent time with her while you guys were yapping.
There you go. Yapping. Yappity yap. Don't talk back. Yeah. Cool.
Hey, you guys want to see what I was doing while I was listening to you guys?
Sure.
Oh, I don't know.
Are you wearing pants?
I don't know. Sounds scary.